Hey there, and welcome to Crime for Sleep. I know you're having trouble falling asleep, so let me keep you company with true crime stories from around the world. Before we dive in, I'm curious, where did you first hear this one? If you enjoy these stories, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Now get comfortable, and let's get into tonight's case. Crime 1, I found it under the bed while vacuuming, a small velvet pouch. I thought it might be jewelry, maybe forgotten, but inside were teeth, not baby teeth, adult ones discolored and cracked. There were 14 in total, each labeled with a strip of masking tape. One had my initials on it. I hadn't invited anyone to stay that night. No one was supposed to be in that room but me. The house had been quiet for weeks since I moved in. A rental property furnished with that particular smell of places where strangers have lived before you. The landlord mentioned previous tenants but never gave details, just that the last one had left suddenly, owing 2 months' rent. The security deposit covered most of it, he said, counting bills with fingers that shook slightly. I kept the pouch in my kitchen drawer beneath the takeout menus and loose batteries. Every morning I'd make coffee and feel its presence there, a weight that seemed heavier than 14 teeth should carry. The masking tape labels were written in different handwriting styles, some in blue ink, others in pencil. The one with my initials was in red marker, fresh enough that it smudged when I touched it. The neighbor across the hall worked nights and slept during the day. Sometimes I'd hear her moving around, the soft padding of bare feet on hardwood. When we passed in the hallway, she'd nod but never make eye contact. Her apartment smelled like antiseptic and something sweet, like cotton candy or vanilla candles. One afternoon, she knocked on my door holding a plate of cookies. "Welcome to the building," she said, still not meeting my eyes. The previous tenant was such a nice person, very quiet, very clean. I asked if she knew why they'd left so suddenly. She shifted the plate from one hand to the other, and I noticed her fingernails were bitten down to the quick. "People leave for all sorts of reasons," she said. "Sometimes they don't have a choice." That evening I found myself going through the apartment more carefully. In the bathroom medicine cabinet, behind expired prescription bottles, there was a small notebook. The pages were filled with dates and abbreviations I couldn't decipher. Some entries had numbers beside them, always even, 2, 4, 6, 8. The handwriting matched one of the labels from the teeth. I called the landlord. He answered on the first ring, as if he'd been waiting. "Did the previous tenant leave anything behind?" I asked. The silence stretched long enough that I wondered if the call had dropped. "People leave things," he finally said. "Usually nothing important. Why did you find something?" I described the notebook, not the teeth. Something held me back from mentioning those. "Throw it away," he said quickly. "Whatever it is, just throw it away. The tenant is gone and won't be coming back." But I didn't throw it away. Instead, I started matching the dates in the notebook to local news reports online. Missing persons cases, unsolved disappearances, dental records requested by police departments. The pattern emerged slowly, like a photograph developing in chemical baths. The neighbor knocked again the next week. This time she didn't bring cookies. "Have you been asking questions?" she said. Her voice was different now, sharper. "Just curious about who lived here before." She stepped closer and I could smell that antiseptic scent more strongly. It reminded me of dental offices, of sterile instruments and numbing gel. "Curiosity isn't always healthy," she said. "Some doors should stay closed." That night I heard sounds from her apartment, not footsteps this time, but something rhythmic, like drilling but softer, more precise. It stopped before dawn, replaced by running water that lasted until the sun came up. I found myself checking the pouch obsessively, counting the teeth, examining the labels. The one with my initials bothered me most. The red marker was too fresh, too deliberate, as if someone knew I would find it, as if someone wanted me to find it. The building's basement laundry room had a storage area behind the machines. Cardboard boxes, old furniture, the detritus of former lives. I went down there with a flashlight, telling myself I was just exploring. Behind a broken refrigerator, I found more notebooks, dozens of them filled with the same dates and numbers. The handwriting varied, but the format was identical, clinical, methodical. Some notebooks had photographs tucked between the pages, Polaroids of people smiling, unaware, normal faces in normal settings, but their mouths were circled in red marker with numbers written beside them, even numbers, always even. I recognized one face immediately. It was me, taken through my kitchen window while I made coffee. My mouth was circled with the number 14 written beside it, the same number of teeth in the pouch. The revelation hit like cold water. I wasn't the first tenant to find that pouch. I was supposed to find it. The pattern was clear now, written in those careful notebooks, documented in those clinical photographs. Each tenant found the teeth. Each tenant became curious. Each tenant added their own discoveries to the collection. And each tenant eventually disappeared. I climbed the stairs from the basement, my hands shaking as I gripped the railing. The hallway seemed longer now, the fluorescent lights flickering in a rhythm that matched my heartbeat. The neighbor's door was open just a crack, and I could see her silhouette moving inside. She was wearing something white, like a lab coat or medical scrubs. Back in my apartment, I packed quickly. Just essentials, just enough to disappear quietly like the previous tenant had done. But as I reached for the door handle, I heard the soft padding of bare feet in the hallway. The neighbor was waiting outside, no longer bothering to hide. "Leaving so soon?" she asked. Her smile revealed teeth that were too perfect, too white. Dental implants, I realized, professional work. I still have the pouch. I carried it with me when I left that night, slipping out through the fire escape while she waited by my front door. But sometimes, in my new place, I catch myself counting the teeth again. 14, always 14. And sometimes I wonder if the number matches exactly because it's supposed to. Because maybe the previous tenant didn't disappear at all. Maybe they just became very, very quiet. Crime 2, I never thought I'd be the person sifting through someone else's belongings, but there I was, standing in a kitchen that still smelled faintly of vanilla and something else I couldn't identify. The realtor had handed me the keys with an apologetic smile, mentioning that the previous tenant had left abruptly. Personal emergency, she'd said. The rent was too good to pass up, even with the hastily abandoned furniture and the lingering sense that someone had fled rather than moved. The apartment felt lived in but hollow, like a stage set after the actors had gone home. I found myself drawn to the small details the previous tenant had left behind: a coffee mug with a lipstick stain on the rim, mail scattered across the counter, a phone charger still plugged into the wall. Among the scattered papers, I noticed several unopened envelopes with increasingly urgent red stamps, final notices, past due, the kind of mail people ignore when they're drowning. It was while organizing these papers that I found the journal, leather-bound and worn, tucked between two recipe books that looked like they'd never been opened. The first few entries were mundane, grocery lists, appointment reminders, fragments of daily life. But as I read deeper, the tone shifted. The handwriting became more erratic, the entries shorter but more intense. The neighbor upstairs has been walking back and forth all night again. Same pattern, 7 steps to the window, pause, 7 steps back, every night for 2 weeks now. I glanced up at my ceiling. I hadn't heard any footsteps, but then again, I'd only been here 3 days. Found another note under my door today, same handwriting as the others, still no signature, just those 2 words, I know. Know what? I've called the building manager twice. He says he'll look into it. My skin prickled. I'd found no notes under my door, but I made a mental note to check the building manager's contact information. The entries continued, each one painting a picture of someone slowly unraveling. The calls started again, always the same time when I'm getting ready for bed. No one speaks, but I can hear breathing. Sometimes what sounds like typing in the background. I've changed my number twice. I set the journal down and walked to the window. The view overlooked a courtyard where other tenants occasionally passed through. Normal people living normal lives, but reading these entries I began to see the space differently. The way shadows fell across the walkways, the perfect vantage point this window provided into several other apartments. That evening I called my sister. She's always been the practical one, the voice of reason when I tend to overthink things. "You're reading someone's private journal," she pointed out after I described my discovery. "Maybe you should just put it away." But I couldn't. Something about the progression of entries felt important, like pieces of a puzzle that might explain why someone would abandon a lease mid-month, leaving behind personal belongings and unpaid bills. The entries became more fragmented as they progressed. Saw him again today, same jacket, same newspaper, third coffee shop this week, coincidence. My supervisor asked if everything was okay at home, said I seemed distracted lately. How can I explain that I don't feel safe in my own space without sounding paranoid? The photos are missing, the ones from my desk drawer, nothing else touched, but those specific photos are gone. I know I put them there. I found myself checking my own desk drawer, though I'd only been in the apartment a few days. Empty, of course. But the gesture felt automatic, like the journal was teaching me to be suspicious of my own environment. The building manager turned out to be a soft-spoken man in his 60s who remembered the previous tenant well. "Nice lady," he said, leaning against the doorframe of his ground-floor office. "Quiet, paid rent on time until the last few months, then she got skittish. Started asking about the locks, wanted to know who else had keys to the building." "Did she mention failing unsafe?" He shifted uncomfortably. "She filed a few complaints, noise from upstairs, suspicious activity in the courtyard, but when I investigated, I never found anything concrete. Other tenants said they hadn't noticed anything unusual." "What about the tenant above her, the one she mentioned?" "That unit's been empty for 6 months. Previous tenant moved out, and we've been renovating ever since." The journal's final entries were dated just 2 weeks before I'd moved in. "I know how this sounds, but I think someone has been in my apartment. Things moved slightly. The kind of changes you only notice if you live somewhere long enough to know exactly how you left everything. A book turned the wrong way. A pen moved from one side of the notepad to the other. I'm documenting everything now, taking photos of how I leave things. I need proof that I'm not losing my mind." The breathing on the phone calls has changed. It's deliberate now, almost like a pattern. 3 short breaths, pause, 3 long ones like a code. I found myself holding my breath as I read, unconsciously listening for sounds in my own space. The building was old, full of settling noises and shared walls, but now every creak felt intentional, every distant sound potentially significant. The last entry was different from the others. The handwriting was steady, almost calm. I figured it out. It's not what I thought, it's worse. And then nothing, no explanation, no details, just those 8 words and blank pages. I spent the next few days trying to piece together what she might have discovered. I talked to other tenants, casually asking about the previous occupant and whether they'd noticed anything unusual. Most barely remembered her. A few mentioned that she'd seemed anxious toward the end, but attributed it to work stress or personal problems. It was the elderly woman in the unit across the courtyard who provided the first real clue. She invited me in for coffee and spoke in the conspiratorial tone of someone who'd been waiting for the right person to share her observations with. I used to see her in the evenings, she said, gesturing toward my window, always at the same spot looking out. At first I thought she was just enjoying the view, but then I realized she was watching something specific, or someone. What do you mean? There's a pattern to how people move through this building. Most tenants get home around the same time, leave around the same time, but there was someone who didn't fit the pattern. Someone who seemed to know exactly when she'd be at that window. She led me to her own window and pointed to a bench partially hidden by trees. He'd sit there sometimes, close enough to see her apartment, far enough away to look casual. Middle-aged man, always wore a dark jacket. I noticed because he never seemed to have anywhere to go, just sat and watched. Did you tell the police? What would I tell them, a man sitting on a public bench? But after she moved out, I never saw him again. That night I positioned myself at the same window where the previous tenant used to stand. The courtyard was quiet, lit by a few scattered lamps that created more shadows than illumination. I found myself studying every movement, every figure that passed through the space, trying to understand what she might have seen. Around 10 o'clock my phone rang, unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. Silence, then faintly the sound of someone breathing. Deliberate, measured. 3 short breaths, pause, 3 long ones. I hung up immediately, my hands shaking slightly. Coincidence, I told myself. Random call, wrong number. But the pattern was exactly what she described in her journal. The calls continued over the next few days. Always the same time, always the same breathing pattern. I started documenting them just as she had. Screenshot of the number, note of the time, description of what I heard. The numbers were always different, but the pattern never changed. I began to understand her growing paranoia. It wasn't the individual incidents that were terrifying, it was their consistency, their deliberate nature. Someone was establishing a routine, creating a sense of inevitability. The calls weren't random harassment, they were communication. But communication about what? I found my answer in the building's basement storage area. I'd gone down to check on the unit assigned to my apartment and discovered that the previous tenant's belongings were still there, abandoned when she'd fled. The building manager had mentioned that she'd left without collecting her deposit or remaining possessions, but seeing the boxes of someone's entire life packed hastily and forgotten felt deeply unsettling. Most of the boxes contained ordinary household items, but in the last one I found a manila envelope filled with photographs. The missing photos from her desk drawer. Someone had taken them from her apartment and then returned them to her belongings after she'd left. The photos were unremarkable at first glance, family gatherings, vacation snapshots, casual moments with friends. But as I studied them more carefully, I noticed something that made my blood run cold. In several of the photos, there was a figure in the background, different locations, different occasions, but the same person. A middle-aged man in a dark jacket, always positioned where he could observe the main subjects of the photo. He wasn't part of the gatherings, he was documenting them. I spread the photos across my kitchen table, organizing them chronologically based on the dates stamped on the backs. The pattern became clear. Someone had been following the previous tenant for years, not months. The photos spanned different addresses, different phases of her life. The journal entries I'd read represented only the final chapter of a much longer story. The breathing calls stopped after I found the photos. Not gradually, but abruptly, as if someone had been waiting for me to discover them. The silence was almost worse than the harassment. It felt like acknowledgement, like approval. I should have gone to the police then, should have turned over the journal, the photos, the documentation of the calls, but something held me back. The previous tenant had tried to get help, had filed complaints and changed her number multiple times. The system had failed her, had dismissed her concerns as paranoia until she'd been forced to flee. And now I understood why. The photos weren't just evidence of stalking. They were proof of something more systematic, more patient. Someone with access to personal information, someone who could track movements and predict patterns. Someone who understood that the most effective way to terrorize someone wasn't through dramatic gestures, but through the slow erosion of their sense of safety. I found myself checking my own photos, looking for background figures I might have missed. I changed my routines, varied my schedule, covered my windows. But I couldn't shake the feeling that I was playing a game whose rules I didn't understand, against an opponent who'd been perfecting their strategy for years. The final piece of the puzzle came from an unexpected source. A letter arrived in my mail, addressed to the previous tenant. It had been forwarded from another address, then another, following a trail of forwarding requests that painted a picture of someone who'd been running for longer than I'd realized. The letter was from a law firm notifying her that a settlement had been reached in her case, a case involving workplace harassment and illegal surveillance. The monetary amount was significant, but what caught my attention was the defendant's name. I recognized it from the building directory. He lived 3 floors up. I never confronted him, never called the police. Never tried to track down the previous tenant to return her belongings or share what I'd learned. Instead, I moved out quietly just as she had, left no forwarding address, paid the penalty for breaking my lease early. Because I'd realized something that made all the other discoveries pale in comparison. The photos, the calls, the systematic harassment, they weren't random acts of obsession. They were a method. A practiced routine that had been perfected over years, possibly decades. And now in my new apartment across town, I've started receiving photos in my mail. Casual shots of me going to work, shopping for groceries, meeting friends for coffee. In each one there's a figure in the background, different clothing, different locations, but I recognize the pattern now. I know how this works, I know what comes next. The question isn't whether I'll run again. The question is how long I'll wait before I do. Crime 3, I never paid much attention to the apartment across the hall until the smell started seeping through my door. It was subtle at first, something sweet mixed with something sour, like flowers left too long in stagnant water. I thought maybe the neighbor was cooking something unfamiliar, but the smell lingered for days, growing stronger each time I walked past. The woman who lived there kept to herself. I'd seen her maybe 3 times in the 6 months since I moved in, always carrying grocery bags, always looking down at her phone, never making eye contact. She had this way of fumbling with her keys that made me think she was nervous about something, but I figured everyone has their quirks. The first real sign something was wrong came when I noticed her mail piling up. The postal worker had started leaving notes, and I could see envelopes scattered on the floor through the gap under her door. That's when the smell became impossible to ignore. I knocked, no answer, knocked again, louder this time. The silence felt heavy, like it was pushing back against the sound of my knuckles on wood. I pressed my ear to the door and heard nothing, not even the hum of appliances or the whisper of air conditioning. Just complete, unsettling quiet. The building manager was reluctant to check on her. He kept saying she was probably visiting family, that people go away without warning all the time. But when I mentioned the smell, his expression changed. He knew that smell. We both did, even if neither of us wanted to say it out loud. When we finally opened the door, the apartment was immaculate. Spotless counters, perfectly arranged furniture, not a single thing out of place. Except for the woman who was sitting in her favorite chair facing the window, still wearing the same blue sweater I'd seen her in weeks ago. The coroner said she'd been dead for at least 10 days. Natural causes, probably a heart attack. Nothing suspicious about it, nothing that required investigation. Just a lonely woman who died alone and wasn't discovered until the smell gave her away. But I kept thinking about how clean everything was, too clean, like someone had spent considerable time arranging things just so. And there were details that didn't fit. Fresh flowers in a vase on the kitchen table, still vibrant and fragrant. A cup of coffee on the counter with no mold growing on the surface. Milk in the refrigerator that hadn't soured. I started asking questions. The grocery store clerk remembered her coming in regularly, but couldn't recall the last time he'd seen her. The mailman said she'd been picking up her mail until recently, but when I asked him to be more specific, he couldn't remember exact dates. Everyone's memory seemed fuzzy when it came to pinpointing when they'd last seen her alive. Then I found the journal. It was tucked behind a row of books, written in her careful handwriting. The entries detailed her daily routine with obsessive precision, what she ate for breakfast, which television programs she watched, how many steps she took to the mailbox. But the entries stopped abruptly 3 weeks before her body was discovered, not 10 days. The final entry was different from the others. Her handwriting was shakier, more urgent. He knows I've been watching. He knows what I saw that night in the parking garage. I should have minded my own business, but now it's too late. If something happens to me, check the security footage from the building across the street. Check the night of the 14th. I went to the police with the journal, but they weren't interested. The case was closed, they said. Natural death, nothing suspicious. When I pressed them about the security footage, they told me it had already been reviewed and showed nothing relevant, but they wouldn't let me see it myself. The building across the street was where the previous tenant had lived, the one who'd moved out suddenly just before I moved in. I'd never met him, but other residents described him as quiet, polite, someone who kept unusual hours. The kind of person you'd barely notice, which made him perfect for noticing others. I started spending time in the parking garage, trying to understand what she might have seen. There were blind spots where the security cameras couldn't reach, areas where someone could come and go without being recorded. I found scratches on the concrete wall that looked fresh, and what appeared to be clean stains on the ground. The more I dug, the more questions emerged. Why had the apartment been so pristine when someone who'd been dead for 10 days should have left behind signs of their final moments? Why were there fresh groceries in a kitchen belonging to someone who hadn't been seen alive in weeks? And why did everyone who claimed to remember her have such vague recollections of their last interactions? I tried to track down the previous tenant, but he'd left no forwarding address. His lease had been paid in cash. His references were disconnected phone numbers. It was as if he'd never existed at all, which made me wonder what else might not be as it seemed. The woman's family came to clean out her apartment. They were distant relatives who barely knew her, people who seemed more interested in what she might have left behind than in understanding how she died. They threw away most of her belongings, including the journal I'd told the police about. When I asked if they wanted to keep any personal items, they said there was nothing worth saving. But I'd already made copies of the journal pages, and I'd noticed something the family missed, a small key taped under one of her dresser drawers. It didn't fit any lock in her apartment, but it was clearly important enough for her to hide. The key opened a safety deposit box at a bank downtown. Inside were photographs, dozens of them, all taken from her apartment window with a telephoto lens. Pictures of people coming and going from the building across the street, some taken during daylight, others at night with night vision equipment. Most of the photos showed ordinary activities: residents returning from work, visitors arriving for dinner parties, delivery drivers dropping off packages. But several images stood out. They showed the same person, someone I couldn't quite identify because their face was always turned away or obscured, entering and leaving the building at odd hours, sometimes carrying what looked like cleaning supplies or large bags. The timestamps on the photos went back months, suggesting she'd been watching for a long time. But the final batch, taken in the weeks before her death, showed something different. The mysterious figure was looking up at her window, as if they'd realized they were being watched. I brought the photos to the police again, but this time they seemed more annoyed than dismissive. They told me I was interfering with a closed case, that my amateur investigation was becoming a nuisance. When I asked why they weren't curious about what the woman had discovered, they suggested I might want to consider moving to a different building. That's when I started noticing changes in my own routine. Mail that arrived later than usual, the feeling that someone had been in my apartment while I was at work, subtle differences in how I'd left certain objects. Nothing I could prove, nothing that would sound credible if I reported it. The building across the street has a new tenant now, someone who keeps unusual hours, someone who's always polite when we cross paths in the neighborhood, someone who reminds me of how others described the previous resident. I've been thinking about moving, but I keep coming back to that journal entry about the security footage. The woman believed she'd witnessed something significant enough that someone would kill to keep it secret. But what if she was wrong about who was watching whom? What if the person she'd been photographing wasn't the dangerous one? I look at those pictures again sometimes, studying the faces I can see clearly, wondering if I'm missing something obvious. The woman was so certain she was in danger, so convinced that someone wanted to silence her. But maybe the real question isn't who killed her, maybe it's whether anyone killed her at all. Natural deaths happen every day. People die alone in their apartments and aren't discovered for weeks. It's sad, but not suspicious. Unless you start looking for connections that might not exist, unless you start seeing patterns in coincidences. I still have the key to her safety deposit box. I still have copies of those photographs, and I still smell that sweet, sour odor sometimes when I walk past her old apartment, even though new tenants moved in months ago. The question that keeps me awake isn't whether she was murdered. It's whether I'm becoming just like her, watching, documenting, seeing threats where none exist. Because the more I investigate, the more I realize that the line between observer and participant isn't as clear as I thought. And sometimes, late at night when I'm reviewing those photographs, I notice something new in the background. Something that wasn't there before, or something I simply hadn't seen. A detail that changes everything, or changes nothing at all. Crime 4, I opened it expecting bills or junk flyers, but it was stuffed with long strands of hair, dark, tangled, and wet. There was no envelope, no note, just the hair. I pulled it out slowly, watching as it kept coming, like someone had jammed it in with purpose. Then I saw it, a tiny piece of scalp still attached. The lock on the mailbox wasn't broken. That means someone had the key. The weight of those wet strands in my palm felt wrong. Hair shouldn't be that heavy. It shouldn't smell like copper and something else I couldn't place, something sweet and rotten at the same time. I stood there in my driveway, neighbors walking their dogs like nothing had changed, while I held what could only be evidence of something terrible. My first instinct was to call the police, but then I remembered the detective who handled my sister's case. How he looked at me when I insisted someone was watching our house. How he filed the report and never called back. The hair felt real in a way their investigation never did. I went inside and spread the strands across my kitchen table. Under the harsh fluorescent light, I could see they weren't all from the same person. Different textures, different shades of brown and black, some were coarse, others fine. Some had been cut clean, others looked torn. I counted 7 distinct types, 7 people. The mailbox key had always bothered me. When I moved into this house, the previous owner handed it over with all the others, but something in her expression made me pause. She looked relieved to be rid of it, too eager to leave. I should have asked more questions. I started checking my mailbox at different hours, not because I expected more hair, but because I wanted to understand the pattern, who had access, who knew my schedule. The mail carrier came around noon, always efficient, never lingering. But there were other people, the woman who jogged past and always glanced toward my house, the maintenance worker who serviced the streetlights, the elderly man who walked slowly and seemed to study every mailbox on the street. That's when I noticed the photographs. Mixed in with my regular mail over the next few days, I found Polaroids. Not of me, but of women I didn't recognize. They were taken from a distance, grainy and poorly lit. The women were going about their daily lives, getting into cars, walking out of buildings, sitting on park benches, but someone had been watching them, documenting them. Each photo had a number written in red ink on the back, 7 photos, 7 numbers. I spread them across the table next to the hair samples. The connection felt obvious and terrifying. The woman who sold me the house had left a forwarding address. I drove there after work, rehearsing what I'd say. How do you ask someone if they know why human hair was being delivered to their old mailbox? But when I arrived, the house was empty. A realtor's sign in the front yard said it had been vacant for months. I called the real estate office. The agent who answered sounded confused when I mentioned the previous owner's name. According to their records, the house had been owned by the bank for over a year before I bought it. There was no previous owner. No woman with nervous eyes and trembling hands who couldn't wait to leave. That night I sat in my kitchen staring at the evidence I'd collected. 7 samples of hair. 7 photographs, 7 women I'd never met but who someone had been watching. The numbers on the back of the photos weren't random, they were dates, recent dates, and they were counting down. I realized I had to find these women, not because I was brave or heroic, but because the alternative was unthinkable. Someone was collecting trophies and using my mailbox as their storage unit. Someone who had convinced me they were the previous homeowner. Someone who still had a key. The first woman was easy to locate. She worked at a coffee shop downtown, and I recognized her from the photograph immediately. When I approached her during her break, she looked at me like I was crazy. Hair in a mailbox. She touched her own hair unconsciously, then told me she'd been finding dead roses on her car windshield for weeks. No note, no pattern she could identify, just roses, wilted and black. The second woman was harder to find, but the photograph showed her getting into a car with distinctive license plates. I waited in the parking lot where the photo was taken until I saw her. She was limping slightly, favoring her left leg. When I showed her the photograph, her face went pale. Someone had been calling her house and hanging up. Someone had been leaving messages on her door. Someone knew things about her daily routine that they shouldn't know. Each woman I found told me a similar story. They were being watched, followed, contacted by someone who stayed just out of sight. None of them had reported it because individually each incident seemed harmless. Roses, phone calls, a photograph slipped under a door, but together they formed a pattern of escalating obsession. The seventh woman was different. When I found her address and knocked on her door, a neighbor told me she'd moved away suddenly. No forwarding address, no explanation, just packed up and left one morning. The neighbor mentioned she'd seemed scared in her final weeks, jumping at every sound, checking over her shoulder constantly. I went back to my house and sat at the kitchen table, staring at the empty chair where the seventh woman should have been. The hair samples seemed to pulse under the light. 7 women, 6 still alive, 1 missing. That's when I found the video. It was in my mailbox the next morning, a small digital camera with a note attached. "Watch this," written in the same red ink as the numbers on the photographs. The video was grainy, shot from inside a car parked across from my house. It showed me walking to my mailbox, opening it, pulling out the hair. But it also showed something else, a figure in the background, standing at my kitchen window, watching me through the glass. The figure was wearing my clothes, had my silhouette, but the face was turned away from the camera and something about the posture was wrong, too still, too patient. I rewound the video and watched it again. There I was, pulling hair from my mailbox while someone who looked exactly like me watched from inside my house. But I lived alone. I'd lived alone for months. The camera was still recording when I found it. A small red light blinked steadily, documenting my discovery. Someone was still watching. Someone who had been inside my house, wearing my clothes, studying my routines well enough to replicate them perfectly. I never found out who the 7th woman was or what happened to her. The police took my statement, filed their report, and told me to call if anything else unusual happened. They kept the hair samples and the photographs, but they returned the video camera, said there wasn't enough evidence to pursue an investigation. But I kept the camera. Sometimes I watch the footage again, trying to understand what I'm seeing. The figure in my kitchen moves occasionally, adjusting its position to get a better view. It's patient in a way that humans aren't usually patient. It knows something I don't know. I still live in the same house. I changed the locks, but I never changed the mailbox. Every morning I open it expecting bills or advertisements. Every morning I find exactly what I expect to find. But sometimes when I'm walking back to the house, I catch a glimpse of movement in my kitchen window, a silhouette that looks familiar but moves wrong. The other 6 women have all moved away now, different cities, different states, but they send me messages sometimes, checking in. They all report the same thing, the feeling of being watched never really goes away. They've learned to live with it, but it's always there, that sense that someone is documenting their lives from just outside their vision. I think about the 7th woman often, whether she got away or whether she became something else entirely. Whether the person who looked like me in that video was really a person at all, or something that had learned to copy human behavior without understanding what it meant. The mailbox key sits on my kitchen table next to where I used to spread out the evidence. I've never used it since that first morning. I don't need to. The mail carrier has their own key, and they deliver exactly what you'd expect them to deliver. But sometimes I wonder who else has a key, who else knows my address, who else has been inside my house, learning to move like me, learning to exist in spaces I thought were private. The video camera still blinks its small red light, still recording, still watching. And somewhere I think the seventh woman is watching too, having learned something about patience that the rest of us haven't figured out yet. Crime 5, the coffee cup sat exactly where she left it every morning, cold now with that thin film of cream floating on top like a cloudy eye. I'd been staring at it for what felt like forever, watching the kitchen sunlight shift across the ceramic rim. She always used this cup, the one with the small chip near the handle that she'd trace with her thumb while thinking. But she hadn't been back to drink from it in 17 days. I work as a records clerk at the courthouse, filing endless paperwork that most people never see. Divorce proceedings, property disputes, small claims that drag on for months. It's methodical work, the kind that lets your mind wander while your hands stay busy. That's probably why I noticed the inconsistency in her case file so quickly. The dates didn't align. The witness statements had subtle contradictions that everyone else seemed to miss. Her name was on every document, but the details painted different pictures of the same woman. The detective assigned to her case seemed tired when I first approached him. He had that weathered look of someone who'd seen too many missing person reports that never led anywhere. His desk was cluttered with folders, coffee-stained and dog-eared, each one representing someone's absence from the world. "She left voluntarily," he said, not looking up from his computer screen. "Happens more often than you'd think. People just walk away from their lives." But he hadn't seen her trace that chip on the coffee cup every morning. He hadn't noticed how she always locked the door twice before leaving, or how she kept her keys in her left pocket, never her purse. These weren't the habits of someone planning to disappear. I started visiting the places she frequented, the small grocery store where she bought her weekly supplies, always paying in cash. The elderly clerk remembered her, quiet, polite, always bought the same brand of tea. But something in his expression shifted when I mentioned her name, a flicker of recognition that seemed deeper than casual customer service. "She asked strange questions sometimes," he said, adjusting his glasses nervously. "About the security cameras, whether they recorded audio. Said she was doing research for a project. The security footage from that week had been automatically deleted," he explained. "Standard policy." But his hands shook slightly as he spoke, and I noticed him glance toward the back office where the recording equipment was kept. Her apartment felt different when I returned. I had a spare key. She'd given it to me months ago when she went out of town for a weekend. The space looked lived in, but somehow hollow, like a stage set between performances. Her books were arranged perfectly on the shelves, spines aligned with mathematical precision, too perfect for someone who actually read them regularly. In her bedroom, I found the journal she'd mentioned once but never let me read. The entries were detailed, methodical, documenting conversations with neighbors, noting patterns in their daily routines. She'd been watching people, recording their habits with the dedication of a researcher or someone planning something that required precise timing. One entry stood out. She'd written about hearing voices through the walls late at night, conversations that seemed to stop whenever she tried to listen more closely. But the apartment next door had been vacant for months, according to the landlord. I'd seen the "for rent" sign myself, weathered and faded from hanging in the window. The voices on her answering machine told a different story than the one in the police report. I played them back repeatedly, listening to the subtle stress in her words, the pauses that seemed calculated rather than natural. In the last message, she mentioned meeting someone to discuss the situation, but she didn't say who or where. Her bank statements showed regular withdrawals of small amounts over several weeks, not enough to raise suspicion, but consistent enough to accumulate a substantial sum. The final withdrawal was made 2 days before anyone noticed she was missing, from an ATM across town in a neighborhood she'd never mentioned visiting. I found myself returning to that coffee cup every morning, as if it might hold answers that the police reports and witness statements couldn't provide. The cream had long since dissolved, leaving only cold, bitter liquid that reflected the kitchen ceiling like a dark mirror. The photograph in her living room showed her with a group of people I'd never met. Their faces were familiar in the way that made me feel like I should remember them, but every time I tried to place them, the memory slipped away. She stood slightly apart from the others, her smile not quite reaching her eyes, her posture suggesting she was ready to step out of the frame at any moment. Her coworkers described her as reliable, punctual, but admitted they knew very little about her personal life. She ate lunch alone, left promptly at closing time, and never joined them for after-work gatherings. Professional but distant, like she was performing the role of a colleague rather than actually being one. The pharmacy where she filled her prescriptions had no record of her collecting her medication in the weeks before she disappeared. Anxiety medication, the pharmacist explained, something she'd been taking for months, but the pills were still in her bathroom cabinet, the bottle nearly full, as if she'd stopped taking them suddenly. I started having dreams about finding her in places she'd never been. Standing in empty rooms, sitting in cars I'd never seen before, always just out of reach when I tried to approach. In these dreams, she looked at me with an expression I couldn't read, her lips moving as if she was trying to tell me something important, but no sound emerged. The more I learned about her disappearance, the less I felt I knew about her life. Every answer raised new questions. Every explanation created deeper mysteries. The woman who traced the chip on her coffee cup every morning seemed to be someone entirely different from the person described in the witness statements and police reports. Sometimes I wonder if I ever really knew her at all, or if I was just another observer in her carefully constructed performance. The coffee cup sits in the same spot, a monument to routine and normalcy that might have been nothing more than an elaborate disguise. The silence in her apartment has a weight that presses against my chest when I visit. It's not the absence of sound, but the presence of something unspoken, something that hangs in the air like a held breath that will never be released. I keep her key in my left pocket now, the way she used to keep hers. Sometimes I catch myself tracing its edges with my thumb, searching for answers in the familiar gesture. But the key only opens doors to empty rooms, and the questions multiply with each discovery. The truth feels like something I'm circling around but can never quite reach, always just beyond the edge of understanding. Maybe that's how she planned it. Maybe disappearing was the only honest thing she ever did. Crime 6, I found the house key still warm in my palm when I arrived that morning. The realtor had left it under the mat, but metal doesn't hold heat like that, not from sitting in the shade. The family had vanished 3 weeks prior, a mother, father, and their teenage daughter. Their breakfast dishes still sat on the kitchen table, cereal soggy in milk that had curdled to yellow chunks. The newspaper lay folded to the crossword puzzle, half completed in blue ink. Someone had written "help" in the corner margin, so faint I almost missed it. I was there to assess the property for the bank, Standard foreclosure evaluation. Nothing unusual about the assignment except for the smell that hit me when I opened the front door. Sweet and metallic like pennies left in sugar water. I checked the garbage disposal, the refrigerator under the sinks. Nothing rotting, nothing dead, but that smell clung to everything. The living room looked lived in but staged. Couch cushions perfectly fluffed. Remote controls lined up on the coffee table by size. Family photos faced the wall instead of outward. When I turned them around, I saw the same three faces in every frame, but something was wrong with their expressions. They all looked like they were trying not to scream. I walked upstairs to measure the bedrooms. The master bedroom felt normal enough, unmade bed, clothes scattered across a chair, reading glasses on the nightstand. But the daughter's room made my skin crawl. Everything was pink and pristine except for the wall behind her bed. The wallpaper had been scratched away in long, desperate strips. Underneath, someone had carved words into the drywall with something sharp. HEWATCHES sleep was gouged deepest. That's when I heard the tapping. 3 short knocks, pause, 3 more, coming from inside the wall. I pressed my ear against the drywall. The tapping continued, rhythmic and deliberate. Morse code, maybe, or someone trying to communicate. I knocked back once, experimentally. The sound stopped immediately. Then came the crying. Muffled sobbing from somewhere behind the wall. A woman's voice pleading. I couldn't make out words, but the desperation was unmistakable. I ran downstairs to check the basement, thinking maybe someone was trapped between floors. The basement was empty except for a furnace and some storage boxes. But when I stood directly below the daughter's room, I could still hear that crying above me. Back upstairs, I examined the wall more carefully. The scratches formed a pattern, not random destruction, but methodical removal of wallpaper in specific sections. Someone had been searching for something, or trying to get out. I found my first real clue in the kitchen, a stack of medical bills on the counter, all addressed to the father. Psychiatric treatment, multiple therapy sessions, medication prescriptions for severe anxiety and paranoid episodes. The most recent bill was dated 2 days before the family disappeared. The crying had stopped, but now I heard footsteps in the walls. Slow, deliberate pacing that followed me from room to room. When I moved to the kitchen, the footsteps moved to the space behind the kitchen wall. When I climbed the stairs, something climbed with me, just out of sight. I called the realtor to ask about the family's departure. She said they'd left suddenly, packed only essentials, no forwarding address. The father had seemed agitated during their last conversation, kept looking over his shoulder and asking if she heard things too. She'd assumed it was moving stress. But I found their suitcases in the master bedroom closet, still packed, still waiting by the door like they'd been interrupted mid-escape. The daughter's diary was hidden under her mattress. The entries started normal enough: school complaints, friend drama, family dinners. But the tone shifted dramatically in the final weeks. She wrote about hearing voices in the walls, about her father talking to someone who wasn't there, about her mother crying every night and pretending everything was fine during the day. The last entry chilled me. Dad says the man in the walls wants us to leave, but I think the man in the walls is Dad. Mom knows too, but won't say it. We're all pretending not to hear him talking to himself behind our bedroom walls every night. He built something back there, somewhere we can't see. I spent the afternoon searching for hidden panels, secret doors, any way to access the space behind the walls. Nothing, but the sounds continued: footsteps, whispers, occasional sobbing, always just behind wherever I was standing. The police report was filed the day after the family disappeared. A neighbor had called about screaming coming from the house during the night. Officers arrived to find the front door wide open, no signs of struggle, no indication of where the family had gone. They'd written it off as a voluntary departure. But I found something the police had missed. In the backyard, barely visible unless you knew where to look, was a section of disturbed earth near the foundation. Recently dug and hastily covered, the soil was darker there, richer, like something had been feeding it. As evening approached, the sounds in the walls became more urgent, scratching, tapping, and what sounded like someone trying to claw their way out from the inside. I placed my hand against the wall and felt vibrations, like something heavy moving around in a space that shouldn't exist. That's when I found the father's hidden workshop in the basement. Behind a false panel I'd missed earlier was a narrow room filled with construction tools and building supplies. Plans were tacked to the walls, detailed blueprints showing modifications to the house's interior. He'd been building something between the walls, creating spaces that didn't appear on any official floor plan. The final blueprint was different from the others. Smaller rooms, child-sized, with locks on the outside. I left that house as the sun went down, but I couldn't stop thinking about those voices, about that disturbed earth in the backyard, about a family that vanished but might never have left at all. The case was officially closed when no one came forward with information. The house was demolished 6 months later due to structural issues. The new owners built a garden where it used to stand. Sometimes I drive by that lot. The flowers grow unusually well there, thick and vibrant in soil that seems almost too rich. And on quiet evenings when the wind is still, I swear I can hear something calling from underground. 3 voices, maybe, calling for help that never came. Crime 7, I noticed the bubble forming near the corner of the room on a Tuesday that felt like any other. The wallpaper had always been slightly imperfect in that spot, but this was different. It pulsed gently, as if something alive was breathing beneath the faded floral pattern. When I pressed my palm against it, I felt movement, something slippery and soft that shouldn't have been there. At first, I convinced myself it was water damage. The old pipes in this house had given me trouble before, and the stain on the ceiling above suggested a slow leak. But when I peeled back the corner of the wallpaper, the adhesive came away too easily, as if someone had loosened it recently. Underneath, I found a small hole, perfectly circular, just large enough to fit a hand through. My fingers trembled as I reached inside. The space felt deeper than it should have been, extending into the wall cavity. My knuckles scraped against rough wood and insulation before touching something wrapped in cloth. I pulled it out carefully, my heart hammering against my ribs. The bundle was heavier than expected. Inside the stained fabric, I found a set of keys, 4 of them, none matching anything I owned. One was a house key, brass and worn smooth from use. Another looked like it belonged to a car, modern and black with electronic buttons. The third was smaller, possibly for a padlock or storage unit. But it was the 4th key that made my breath catch. Dried blood clung to its grooves, dark brown and flaky. I set them on the kitchen table and stared at them for what felt like hours. The previous owners had left behind furniture, books, even family photos, but they'd never mentioned hiding anything in the walls. I'd lived here for 2 years, and this corner had never shown any signs of disturbance. The realtor's words echoed in my memory. She'd been eager to close the deal, almost pushy about the price reduction. When I'd asked why they were selling so quickly, she'd given me a vague answer about the family relocating for work. But I remembered the way her eyes had darted away from mine, how she'd rushed through the final walkthrough. I decided to visit my neighbor, an elderly woman who lived on the street for decades. She invited me in for coffee, her kitchen smelling of cinnamon and old wood. When I mentioned the previous owners, her expression shifted. Strange family, she said, stirring her cup slowly, kept to themselves mostly, but there were arguments, loud ones. Police came by a few times, though nothing ever seemed to come of it. The husband traveled a lot for business, left her alone with the children for weeks at a time. She paused, her weathered hands wrapped around the warm mug. Last few months they lived there, I hardly saw her at all. Used to wave from the garden, chat over the fence about the weather, then she just stopped coming outside. When I asked him about it once, he said she was sick, staying inside to rest. But I never saw a doctor visit, never saw anyone come to help. The blood on the key felt heavier in my pocket as I walked home. That evening, I searched online for any news about the previous owners, but without knowing their names, I found nothing. The deed transfer documents were filed at the county office, but those wouldn't be accessible until morning. I couldn't sleep that night. Every creak of the house settling made me think about that hole in the wall, about hands pushing keys through the gap, hiding them in desperate haste. I kept imagining someone pressed against the other side of that wall, listening, waiting. The next morning I examined the hole more carefully with a flashlight. The edges were clean, deliberately cut, not worn away by time or water damage. Scratches in the wood suggested repeated use. This wasn't a hiding place created in panic. It was planned, prepared, used multiple times. I found more disturbed wallpaper in the bedroom closet, behind where clothes would hang. Another hole, smaller this time, empty but showing the same careful construction. Someone had created a network of hiding spots throughout the house, invisible unless you knew exactly where to look. The county clerk's office provided the names I needed, and with them I found the newspaper archives. 3 small articles buried in the local section, spread across several months. The first was about a missing person report. A woman who hadn't been seen by family members for weeks. Her husband claimed she'd left to visit relatives, but those relatives had no record of any planned visit. The second article was shorter, just a paragraph about the case being closed due to lack of evidence. No signs of foul play, no indication of where she might have gone. The investigation had lasted less than a month. The third article was about the house sale, mentioning only that the family had decided to relocate after their recent loss. I held the keys up to the light streaming through my kitchen window. The blood had darkened with age, but it was definitely blood. Human blood, I was certain. The house key could have opened the front door I walked through every day. The car key might have started a vehicle that was now destroyed or sold. The small key could have unlocked a storage unit, a safe deposit box, a locker containing evidence that someone desperately wanted to hide. But it was the placement that haunted me most. These keys weren't thrown away or destroyed. They were carefully preserved, hidden where only someone who knew the secret could find them. Someone who lived in this house, who understood its hidden geography. I tried the house key in my front door that evening. It slid in perfectly, turned with a soft click. My hands shook as I realized what this meant. The previous owners had never changed the locks. They'd hidden a spare key in the wall, accessible from inside the house. But why hide a key to your own home, unless it wasn't just a spare? Unless it was evidence of who had access, who could come and go without anyone knowing? The car key bothered me even more. I pressed the buttons, walking around my neighborhood after dark, listening for the chirp of a responding vehicle. Nothing, but somewhere there might be a car registered to a missing woman, a vehicle that someone needed to be able to find and move when necessary. I called the police detective mentioned in the newspaper articles. He was retired now, but I reached him at home. His voice was tired, cautious. "I remember that case," he said. frustrating one. Husband was cooperative, seemed genuinely concerned. No evidence of violence, no financial problems, no history of domestic issues. Sometimes people just walk away from their lives. It happens more than you think. But when I mentioned the keys, the hidden compartments, his tone changed. You found what where in the walls, how many hiding spots. He was quiet for a long moment. I think you should bring those keys down to the station, and don't touch anything else in those holes. I never made it to the police station. That night I heard someone moving around outside my house. Footsteps on the graveled driveway, the soft sound of someone testing windows. I lay in bed, frozen, listening to the methodical search of someone who knew this house intimately. By morning the sounds had stopped, but when I checked the corner where I'd found the keys, the hole had been sealed. Fresh wallpaper covered the spot, applied so recently that the adhesive was still damp. Someone had been inside while I slept, repairing their hiding place, erasing the evidence I'd uncovered. The keys were gone from my kitchen table. In their place was a handwritten note. Some secrets are better left buried. You never saw anything. You never found anything. Forget what you think you know. I moved out of that house within the week, but I still think about those keys, about the woman who disappeared and the husband who claimed ignorance while maintaining hidden passages throughout their home. I think about how easy it would be to make someone vanish, to create a story that satisfies authorities while keeping the truth locked away in the walls. Sometimes I drive by the old house, now occupied by a young family with children. I wonder if they've found any holes, any hidden compartments that might have been missed. I wonder if they sleep peacefully, unaware of what their home might be hiding. And sometimes, late at night, I wonder if the person who took back those keys is still watching, still waiting to see if anyone else gets too curious about the family that used to live there. The case was never reopened. The keys were never analyzed. The truth remains sealed behind fresh wallpaper in a house where secrets have learned to hide themselves very, very well. Crime 8, I inherited the house from an uncle I barely knew. The real estate agent handed me the keys with an apologetic smile, mentioning something about the previous tenant leaving suddenly. The smell hit me first when I walked in, not decay, but something stale and forgotten, like old paper left in humid air. The basement drew my attention immediately, not because of what was there, but because of what wasn't. A perfect rectangle of clean concrete stood out against the dusty floor, as if something heavy had been moved recently. The walls showed faint scrape marks, and when I ran my fingers along them, concrete dust came away on my skin. I started going through the boxes left behind. Most contained ordinary household items, but one held documents, receipts, bank statements, handwritten notes. The handwriting changed halfway through the stack. The earlier notes were neat, careful. The later ones grew erratic, letters pressed so hard they tore through the paper. One phrase appeared repeatedly: "They know about the sound." The neighbor, an elderly woman with careful eyes, mentioned she hadn't seen the previous tenant for weeks before the moving truck came. But she remembered the sounds from the basement grinding, like concrete being broken. She thought it was renovation work. The sounds always came late, when most people were sleeping. I found the audio recordings tucked behind a loose brick. 3 cassette tapes, labeled only with dates spanning 6 months. The first recording captured what sounded like normal conversation, 2 voices discussing mundane topics, but something felt rehearsed about their exchange, like actors reading lines they'd practiced too many times. The second tape contained longer silences. When voices appeared, they were strained, whispering. One voice kept asking, "Are you sure nobody can hear us?" The other voice, weaker now, just repeated "please" over and over. The quality suggested they were recording from inside a small, enclosed space. The third tape made my hands shake. Only one voice remained, talking to itself in fragmented sentences. The concrete sets faster than I thought and should have measured twice, and finally, barely audible, the smell will fade eventually. I brought the tapes to a friend who worked in audio restoration. She cleaned up the recordings, removing background noise and enhancing the clarity. What emerged was worse than static. Underneath the voices, we could hear something else, a rhythmic tapping, like fingernails against a hard surface. It continued throughout all three recordings, growing weaker on each successive tape until it disappeared entirely. The police report from 6 months ago listed a missing person case that was never solved. A local resident had vanished without explanation, leaving behind personal belongings and an unexplained gap in their bank activity. The investigating officer noted that neighbors reported construction sounds from the house around the same period, but no permits had been filed. I measured the basement again, comparing it to the house's original blueprints from the city records. The dimensions didn't match. The current basement was 3 feet shorter than it should have been. 3 feet of space that simply wasn't there anymore. The concrete in that clean rectangle felt different under my touch, newer, less settled than the surrounding floor. When I pressed my ear against it, I thought I heard something. Maybe just the house settling, maybe the heating system cycling, maybe nothing at all. But late at night, when the house grew quiet, I found myself listening. The sound came from below, barely perceptible, like someone tapping Morse code with weakening fingers. It could have been pipes expanding. It could have been my imagination creating patterns in random noise. I never called the police about what I found. The recordings could have been fiction. The basement measurements could have been architectural changes made years ago. The missing person case could have been completely unrelated. People disappear for all kinds of reasons that have nothing to do with the houses they leave behind. I moved out after 3 weeks, leaving everything behind just like the previous tenant. The new owner will probably never notice the clean rectangle in the basement or the faint scratches on the walls. They'll assume any sounds they hear are just old houses settling into their foundations. But sometimes when I pass by the neighborhood, I slow down near that house. The windows are always dark now, and I wonder if the new resident has found the loose brick yet. I wonder if they've measured the basement. I wonder if they listen carefully when the house gets quiet. The tapping might have stopped by now. Concrete is patient, and time has a way of making even the most persistent sounds fade into silence. But I still carry those measurements in my wallet, written on a scrap of paper that I've never thrown away. 3 feet of missing space, 3 cassette tapes, 3 weeks before I couldn't stay anymore. The numbers line up too perfectly to be coincidence, but they're also too convenient to be proof. That's what makes this so disturbing, not what I found, but what I'll never know for certain. The truth might be buried under 3 feet of concrete, or it might exist only in the imagination of someone who spent too long listening to sounds that weren't really there. I keep the recordings in a safety deposit box now. Sometimes I think about destroying them, but I never do. They're evidence of either a terrible crime or an elaborate hoax designed to drive someone toward madness. The only way to know which would be to break through that concrete floor, and I'm not brave enough to discover what might be waiting underneath. The house stands empty again, waiting for its next owner to inherit the mystery along with the deed. Maybe they'll be braver than I was. Maybe they'll call the police or hire contractors to examine that basement floor. Maybe they'll solve what I couldn't bear to investigate further. Or maybe they'll just learn to ignore the sounds and pretend that 3 feet of missing space is perfectly normal. Maybe they'll convince themselves that concrete always settles unevenly and that old houses are full of unexplained noises that mean nothing at all. Either way, the truth remains buried where I left it, patient and permanent as the concrete that may or may not be holding it in place. Crime 9, the photograph was face down on the kitchen counter when I arrived. I could see the indentation where someone had pressed their thumb into the corner, leaving a perfect crescent-shaped mark in the glossy surface. The real estate agent had already left, but her perfume still lingered in the air, something floral and cloying that made my throat tight. I turned the photograph over, a family of 4 smiling at the camera. The father's hand rested on a young woman's shoulder, but his grip looked too firm, his knuckles too white. The mother stood slightly apart, her smile not quite reaching her eyes. The teenage son in the front had that hollow look kids get when they've seen too much. The house had been empty for 18 months, the agent had explained. The previous owners had left suddenly, abandoning most of their belongings. The bank had finally decided to sell. She'd avoided eye contact when she said it, her fingers fidgeting with the lockbox key. I found the first tape recorder in the bedroom closet, wedged behind a box of winter clothes that smelled of mothballs and something else, something metallic and sharp. The recorder was old, the kind with actual cassette tapes. When I pressed play, the voice that emerged was soft, almost whispered. Day 17, she's asking questions again about the basement, about why we sealed it off. I told her it was water damage, but she knows. She always knows when I'm lying. The voice belonged to the father from the photograph. I could hear something in the background, a rhythmic tapping like fingernails on wood. The recording cut off abruptly. I found more tapes hidden throughout the house. Under loose floorboards, taped to the underside of drawers, even one sealed in a plastic bag behind the toilet tank. Each one revealed fragments of a story that didn't quite fit together. Day 23, the smell is getting stronger. We tried bleach, but it just made it worse. Sweet and chemical, like cleaning supplies mixed with something rotting. The girl hasn't come out of her room in 2 days. The teenage son's voice was different, higher, nervous. In the background, I could hear muffled conversation, but the words were impossible to make out. Day 31 found her journal. She wrote about the dreams, about hearing voices from downstairs. I thought she was making it up, but last night I heard them too. Soft voices pleading, coming from the basement. The mother's voice was steadier, but there was an edge to it that made my hands shake as I held the recorder. I could hear her breathing, slow and deliberate, like she was trying to calm herself. I went to the basement. The door was newer than the rest of the house, with fresh paint and a heavy deadbolt that had been installed from the outside. The wood around the frame was splintered, as if someone had tried to break it down from the inside. The basement was empty except for a camping chair positioned directly in the center of the concrete floor. The chair faced a blank wall, but the concrete there was different, newer, smoother. Someone had patched something over. I found a sledgehammer in the garage. The wall cracked on the 3rd swing, revealing a hollow space behind it. The smell that emerged was overwhelming, not decay, but something worse, something that had been contained for too long. Behind the wall was a small room, maybe 6 feet by 6 feet. The walls were covered with scratches, deep gouges in the concrete that looked like they'd been made by fingernails. In the corner was a pile of clothes, a woman's dress, faded and stained. But it was the photographs that made me drop the sledgehammer, dozens of them scattered across the floor. all of the same woman but taken over what looked like months. In the first ones she was smiling, posing normally. In the later ones her eyes were hollow, desperate. In the last few she wasn't looking at the camera at all. I found the final tape recorder in that room, placed carefully on a small shelf that had been carved into the concrete. The tape inside was labeled simply, "The Truth." They'll never believe it was self-defense. They'll never understand what she was going to do to us, to our family. She kept coming back, kept threatening us, said she'd destroy everything we'd built. I couldn't let that happen. The father's voice was different now, calmer, more resolved. In the background, I could hear someone crying softly. We did what we had to do to protect ourselves, to protect our children, but the dreams won't stop. She's still here, still whispering, still telling us what she knows. The recording ended with the sound of footsteps on concrete, growing fainter and fainter. I called the police, of course, but when they arrived, they found only an empty basement and a pile of old photographs. The tape recorders were gone. The family had vanished completely, no forwarding address, no trace of where they'd gone. The detective who interviewed me was kind but skeptical. Missing persons cases were common, he explained. Families disappeared all the time, especially when they were in financial trouble. The bank records showed the family had been behind on their mortgage payments for months. But I kept the key to the house, and sometimes late at night I drive past it. The basement light is on now, casting a yellow glow through the small window. Someone is living there again. I've seen the father's silhouette in that window, standing perfectly still, facing the wall where the hidden room used to be. He stands there for hours, not moving, not speaking. And sometimes, when the wind is just right, I can hear what sounds like whispering coming from the basement. Soft voices pleading, just like the mother had described. The new tenants seem happy enough. They wave when I drive by, smile when I see them at the local market. But I notice things now. The way the father's hand rests too firmly on his wife's shoulder. The way the children's eyes seem hollow, like they've seen too much. And I notice the smell that follows them, something floral and cloying, mixed with bleach and something else. Something that makes my throat tight and my hands shake. I still have the photograph from the kitchen counter. Sometimes I take it out and study the faces, looking for clues I might have missed. But the more I look, the less certain I become about what I really saw in that basement. Maybe it was just shadows. Maybe the photographs were old, left behind by previous owners. Maybe the family really did just leave because of money troubles. But I keep the key, and I keep driving past the house. Because I know what I heard on those tapes. I know what I saw in that hidden room. And I know that some truths are too dangerous to speak out loud. The basement light is still on tonight, and if I listen carefully, I can still hear the whispering. Story 10. In the heart of a forgotten town, there stood a hotel that whispered of secrets. Its faded exterior hinted at a past long gone, a place where travelers sought refuge for a night, only to leave with stories left unspoken. One weary traveler, a woman of curiosity and determination, checked into this antiquated establishment. The clerk, with eyes that held a glint of warning, passed her the key with a cryptic message. "Just don't take the last door on the left," he murmured, a shiver running down her spine. That night, as shadows danced along the dimly lit hallway, she found herself drawn to that forbidden door. The handle, cold as ice, beckoned to her. Though its appearance mirrored the other doors, a subtle shift in the air hinted at something more. Pressing her ear against the door, she heard it, a soft, rhythmic breath, haunting and mysterious, emanating from the other side. Detective Morgan Reed, a woman of keen intuition, was summoned to the scene of a crime that bore the mark of malevolence. Crossing under the yellow tape, she entered a realm tainted by the scent of iron and despair. The room told a chilling tale. A pristine bathroom, an undisturbed bed, and at its center, a young woman lay lifeless on the floor, her eyes fixed on eternity, a silent witness to an unfathomable horror. As Reed knelt beside the victim, the forensic technician spoke of patterns and signatures, of darkness that lingered in the stillness of the night. The victim, adorned in elegance, seemed out of place in this forsaken motel. A handbag lay open, untouched, revealing a life abruptly ended, a story left unfinished. The investigation unfolded like a twisted puzzle, each piece revealing a glimpse into a world of shadows. Reed delved into the victim's life, uncovering secrets and lies woven into the fabric of her existence. Colleagues whispered of a clandestine affair, a man known only as C, whose presence cast a sinister shadow over the case. Through meticulous detective work, Reed traced the threads of deception to Charles Emerson, a man of power and deceit. His polished exterior concealed a darkness that seeped into the very core of his being. As the truth unraveled, Emerson's facade crumbled, revealing a web of manipulation and obsession that led to unspeakable acts of violence. In a courtroom devoid of mercy, the echoes of justice reverberated as Emerson faced the consequences of his malevolent deeds. Reed, a sentinel of truth, watched as the doors of fate swung shut on a chapter of darkness and despair. Yet in the silence that followed, she knew that some doors once opened could never be closed, their secrets haunting the corridors of her mind. And so, the story of the door on the left case became a legend in the annals of crime, a cautionary tale of the depths to which humanity could descend. As the world moved on, Reed lingered in the shadows of memory, haunted by the echoes of a past that refused to fade. Behind locked doors, the keys of the victims lay dormant, whispering of a truth that could never be silenced. Story 11. In the dusty attic of their new Victorian home, Sarah and Michael stumbled upon a forgotten treasure, a porcelain doll with ancient eyes that seemed to follow their every move. Brushing off the unease it brought, they laughed nervously, chalking it up to just another relic of the past. Little did they know, the doll held secrets far deeper than its delicate exterior suggested. As night fell, a strange heaviness settled over the house. The air grew thick, and an eerie silence crept through the corridors. Something was amiss, a whisper of foreboding that lingered in the shadows. And when dawn broke, the doll was nowhere to be found in the attic. Instead, it sat ominously at the foot of their bed, its unblinking gaze fixed upon them. Sarah and Michael, drawn to the house's enigmatic allure, had been captivated by its history, unaware of the darkness that lurked within its walls. Detective Rachel Winters, a seasoned investigator, was called to the scene of a chilling discovery. A couple lay lifeless in their own home, their bodies contorted in unnatural poses, frozen in expressions of terror. As Detective Winters meticulously catalogued the scene, she noted the precision of the victim's arrangement, resembling dolls carefully posed for display. The absence of any forced entry or struggle only deepened the mystery, leaving more questions than answers in its wake. Interviews with neighbors unveiled unsettling accounts of shadow glimpsed through a window, ghostly laughter in the dead of night. Each tale added a layer of unease to the already haunting narrative unfolding within the Victorian walls. The forensic team's findings only fueled the growing sense of dread. Fibers of vintage fabrics, reminiscent of antique doll clothing, littered the crime scene, leading to the attic where the doll had been discovered. But the most perplexing revelation was the absence of any physical trace of an intruder, no fingerprints, no DNA, as if the perpetrator existed beyond the realm of the tangible. Delving into the property's dark past, Detective Winters unearthed a series of inexplicable deaths spanning decades, all linked by a common thread of inexplicable occurrences and tragic endings. A newspaper clipping hinted at a troubled doll maker and his enigmatic creations, whispered tales of rituals and bound spirits woven into the very fabric of his dolls. The discovery of hidden photographs revealed a chilling truth: the doll found by Sarah and Michael was not just a mere plaything, but a vessel for something far more sinister. As the investigation reached a standstill, shrouded in the shadows of the unsolved, a distant relative of the dollmaker unveiled a macabre legacy of forbidden knowledge and dark arts. The line between myth and reality blurred, leaving the case teetering on the edge of the unknown. And then a twist of fate, an inexplicable disappearance of evidence, a lapse in memory, and a chilling realization that some mysteries were never meant to be unraveled. The doll vanished, slipping through the cracks of reality, leaving behind a trail of unanswered questions and whispered secrets. The house changed hands once more, its dark history a cautionary tale whispered among the wary. The attic, now empty save for a forgotten blanket, remained a silent witness to the shadows of the past. Detective Winters, haunted by the enigma that had eluded her grasp, retired into the quiet unknown, carrying with her a truth best left undisturbed. And as the new owners settled into their home, a subtle presence lingered in the stillness of the night, a fleeting shadow, a soft laughter echoing through the halls. The doll may have vanished, but its legacy lived on, a ghostly reminder of the thin veil between the known and the unknowable. Story 12. In the quiet suburban neighborhood, a mysterious key arrived in the mail for Sarah Miller, wrapped in a plain envelope with no return address. It was a single brass key, its surface worn with the passage of time. Sarah couldn't place where she had seen it before, but a sense of familiarity lingered in her mind. Curiosity led her to try the key in every lock she owned, but to her bewilderment, none of them turned. The key didn't belong to her home. As she placed it on the coffee table, the old grandfather clock in the hallway, long silenced and broken, let out a single, hollow chime that echoed through the stillness of the house. Puzzled and somewhat unnerved, Sarah reported the strange incident to the authorities. The responding officer, initially dismissive, took the key as evidence to ease her concerns. Little did they know that this seemingly innocuous key would unlock a chilling chain of events that would haunt the neighborhood for years to come. Detective Robert Harmon of the Special Victims Unit received the case file, his experienced eyes falling upon the unassuming brass key that now rested on his desk. Despite its ordinary appearance, there was an unsettling aura that surrounded it. Background checks on Sarah revealed a life free from any criminal history, a retired teacher, a widow, a mother. Yet, the key's arrival hinted at a darker presence lurking beneath the surface of her peaceful existence. Forensic analysis yielded no fingerprints on the key except Sarah's. The envelope bore no clues, just a generic postmark from a distant distribution center. It seemed as if the key had materialized out of thin air, its origins shrouded in mystery. A breakthrough came when Detective Harmon decided to delve deeper into the key's unique pattern. A connection was made to a cold case from years past, a storage unit with a sinister past, containing evidence of unspeakable crimes against women. As the investigation unfolded, the pieces of a disturbing puzzle began to fall into place. Sarah, innocent and unsuspecting, found herself at the center of a web of darkness woven by a man named Harold Jenkins, a shadowy figure who had once lived nearby, his true nature masked by a facade of normalcy. Jenkins, elusive and cunning, had meticulously orchestrated a series of heinous acts, leaving behind a trail of keys, each one a chilling reminder of lives snuffed out in the shadows. The key sent to Sarah was not a mistake, but a deliberate message, a twisted invitation into his world of horrors. The hunt for Jenkins intensified as the community reeled from the revelations of his atrocities. The man known as the Keymaster had eluded justice for too long, his crimes casting a long shadow over those who had unknowingly crossed his path. In a remote cabin, a macabre chamber of secrets was unearthed, revealing the extent of Jenkins' depravity. Keys with names and dates etched on them, a ghastly catalogue of his victims, painted a harrowing picture of the evil that lurked within him. As the manhunt reached its climax, Jenkins met his end, leaving behind a journal that detailed his twisted motivations and a final message for Sarah, a haunting reminder of the darkness that had touched her life. The horrors of the case reverberated through the neighborhood, leaving scars that would never fully heal. Sarah, forever changed by the ordeal, found solace in knowing that justice had been served, even at a great cost. The brass keys, silent witnesses to unspeakable acts, now lay dormant in an evidence locker, a grim reminder of the fragility of innocence and the depths of human depravity that can lurk behind a facade of normalcy. Story 13, Hidden Beneath. The wooden plank shifted under her weight, a subtle movement that beckoned her curiosity. Sarah Coleman knelt down, her fingers tracing the gap in the floorboards. The old cottage seemed to hold a secret, a whisper of something hidden below. With cautious determination, she lifted the boards, revealing a dark, narrow space beneath the house. In the dim light, she made out a mattress, a chair, and a tattered notebook in the corner. Her name filled the pages of the notebook, written obsessively as if etched with longing and fixation. Detective Morgan Reed stood by her side, observing the scene with a mixture of concern and intrigue. Sarah's gaze pierced the darkness, reflecting a fear deeper than mere surprise. Detective Reed's voice cut through the tension, commanding Sarah not to disturb anything further. The flashlight beam danced across the walls, revealing a collage of surveillance photos capturing Sarah's every move. The room was a shrine to obsession, a testament to Walter Green's fixation that had remained hidden beneath Sarah's sanctuary. The estate, purchased from the deceased Walter Green, had concealed more than just a hidden room. It harbored a chilling history of voyeurism and obsession that had eluded detection for years. The real estate listing had painted a picture of charm and potential, concealing the sinister truth lurking beneath the surface. As the crime scene investigators arrived, the full extent of Walter's obsession unfolded. Fingerprints, photographs, and relics of his fixation were unearthed, painting a disturbing portrait of a man consumed by a delusion of connection. Sarah's ignorance of his presence only fueled his dangerous fantasies. The investigation took a dark turn when a former coworker of Walter's revealed snippets of his fixation on Sarah. A key found in Walter's locker led to a storage unit meticulously arranged to mirror Sarah's former life. The replicas of her belongings, the eerie mannequin, and the ominous calendar hinted at a twisted plan that had been abruptly halted by fate. Walter's past revealed a history of delusion and fixation, a pattern that had resurfaced with Sarah as the object of his obsession. The case closed with Walter's death, leaving behind a chilling legacy of stalking and intent that had narrowly missed its sinister conclusion. Sarah, haunted by the realization of how close she had come to danger, chose to leave the house behind, seeking solace in a new beginning far from the shadows of Walter's obsession. Detective Reed kept a watchful eye from afar, a silent guardian against the lingering threat that had once loomed so close. The cottage passed into new hands, its dark secret sealed away, but for those who knew the truth, the memory of the hidden room beneath the floor lingered as a cautionary tale. A tale of unseen dangers, of monsters obscured by ordinary facades, and of victims who walked the line between safety and peril, unaware of the darkness lurking just beneath their feet. Story 14. The tale began when Michael and Sarah Klein embarked on a journey of unexpected discovery within the walls of their new Victorian-era home. Initially, it seemed like a mere task of removing peeling wallpaper, but as each layer was peeled back, a mysterious narrative unfolded before their eyes. Inscribed in ink, repeated endlessly, was a name that echoed through the ages. Alina Winters adorned the wall in a frantic, uneven script, hauntingly captivating the attention of the new occupants. This name, unfamiliar and shrouded in obscurity, held a perplexing allure that beckoned them to unravel its secrets. The layers of history intertwined within the walls unveiled a peculiar connection that transcended time. It was a name that defied records, a name that led them down a rabbit hole of intrigue and mystery, a name that bore resemblance to the very person who had passed the keys to them, the enigmatic Margaret Cavendish. The Klein couple, initially drawn to the allure of the old residence's charm, found themselves entangled in a web of curiosity and uncertainty. The faded wallpaper, once a mere backdrop, now whispered tales of the past, urging them to delve deeper into its hidden truths. As they unearthed the layers of time, a sense of unease crept upon them. Who was Alina Winters, and why was her name etched so fervently across the wall? The answers eluded them, pushing them to seek solace in the digital realm, where a single search yielded a chilling revelation, a missing persons case that mirrored the visage of Margaret Cavendish. The discovery sparked a relentless pursuit for answers, leading Sarah and Michael down a path fraught with unanswered questions and lingering shadows of the past. Their renovation plans took a back seat as they delved into the mystery that had woven itself into the very fabric of their home. With each piece of the puzzle they unearthed, the mystery deepened, drawing them into a realm where reality blurred with the echoes of a bygone era. The missing Alina Winters became a ghostly presence within the walls, her absence a lingering enigma that haunted their every waking moment. Their quest for truth led them to unexpected revelations, a hidden space beneath the floorboards, identification cards bearing different names, and a chilling connection between Alina and a psychiatric patient named Rebecca Eldridge. The threads of the past intertwined in a tapestry of deceit, unraveling a tale of identity theft and fractured realities. As the investigation unfolded, the walls of their home bore witness to a truth, long buried, a truth that revealed the dark depths of a fractured mind struggling to maintain a fragile facade. The names etched on the wall became a testament to a tragedy that transcended time, a confession written in desperation and guilt. The closure they sought came at a price, as the remains of Alina Winters were unearthed from beneath the garden, laying bare the secrets that had long been concealed. The enigma of Margaret Cavendish was unraveled, exposing a truth that shattered the facade of normalcy that had cloaked their home. In the end, justice prevailed, but the echoes of the past lingered within the walls, whispering tales of a past that refused to be forgotten. The Klein's dream home had become a relic of a dark chapter in history, forever etched in the annals of true crime, a testament to the mysteries that lay hidden beneath the surface. Story 15. The ancient box lay hidden beneath layers of forgotten clutter in the attic, a relic from a time long past belonging to the previous inhabitants of the house. Within its depths were faded Polaroids capturing moments of joy and togetherness, birthdays, family gatherings, the usual fare. But as she reached the final photo, a sense of unease crept over Rebecca. The image depicted her own living room, the familiar couch, the same drapes, yet the family seated there was not hers. And in the shadows behind them loomed a figure, barely discernible in the dim light, a man watching. A shiver ran down Rebecca's spine as she scrutinized the eerie photograph. Her fingers quivered slightly, causing the edges of the Polaroid to tremble. The family in the picture, a woman with honey-blonde locks, a bespectacled man, and two children, smiled innocently at the camera, unaware of the lurking presence just steps away, frozen in a moment of bliss, oblivious to the lurking danger. Descending the creaking wooden staircase, Rebecca felt the weight of the house press in on her, suffocating her with its emptiness. Placing the photo on the cold kitchen counter, she examined it under the harsh glare of the fluorescent light. The uncanny resemblance between her home and these strangers was unmistakable. The archway, the ornate molding, the bay window basking in morning light. This was her sanctuary, yet these faces remained foreign. The arrival of Detective Morgan, clad in a worn leather jacket that whispered of past investigations, marked the beginning of a quiet inquiry. With sharp eyes that missed nothing, he scrutinized the photo methodically. Running a gloved finger along the Polaroid's edge, he flipped it over, revealing a blank back. "What do you know about the previous owners, the Nelsons?" he inquired in a low, rumbling voice. Rebecca confessed next to nothing. They had already relocated out of state when I bought the house. Morgan nodded, his expression inscrutable. "May I hold on to this? Our team might be able to uncover the identity of the family in the picture." And so, the investigation commenced in hushed tones. Tracing back the history of the house, Rebecca learned that the Nelsons had acquired it from the Crawfords, who in turn had purchased it from the Mornos. Detective Morgan delved into property records, interviewed former neighbors, and pieced together a timeline of past residents. A breakthrough occurred unexpectedly. A retired mail carrier identified the family in the photograph as the Sutherlands. They resided in that house briefly before vanishing without a trace, he asserted. Mail piled up, neighbors whispered, yet the family had evaporated into thin air. Forensic analysis dated the photograph to 15 years prior. Examining minute details within the image, the technician pointed out telltale signs of a timer, a setup where the subjects posed before the camera, unaware of the malevolent presence lurking in the hallway. Further scrutiny of the mysterious figure revealed a tall, shadowy silhouette, male and clad in dark attire, his gaze fixed upon the unsuspecting family. He blended into the background, a silent observer with an unsettling air of belonging. Detective Morgan uncovered a pattern, a lineage of families residing in the house for precisely a year before disappearing, leaving no trace behind. Always after 1 year, they faded into oblivion. Rebecca, a mere 4 months into her occupancy, found herself entangled in this enigmatic cycle. Delving into historical records, the investigation unearthed a chilling tale. The house's construction was overseen by a respected architect, yet the project manager vanished mysteriously near completion. Samuel Whitfield, his replacement, emerged to finalize the construction. A single photograph of Whitfield from police archives bore an uncanny resemblance to the figure in the Polaroid. Samuel Whitfield had met his demise in a construction accident, his body lost within the rubble of another site. The basement became the focal point of the inquiry. Ground-penetrating radar uncovered anomalies beneath the concrete floor, leading to a grim discovery. Buried beneath layers of concrete and soil lay the remains of the missing families, preserved in the earth's cold embrace. Among their belongings was the camera that had captured the haunting image in the attic, along with numerous other photographs, each depicting a different family, ignorant of the watcher in the shadows. As the house was cordoned off as a crime scene, Rebecca's ties with it were severed. Investigators stumbled upon a hidden crawlspace concealed behind a false wall in the attic. Inside, they found a cot, photography equipment, and a journal documenting meticulous observations of the house's residents. The final entry, dated just days before, hinted at an ominous revelation. The new arrival is unlike the others. She has discovered my photograph too soon. I must expedite my plans. Seeking safety in a hotel under police protection, Rebecca was jolted awake one night by a call. Breathing on the other end, followed by the mechanical whir of a Polaroid camera snapping a photo, sent chills down her spine. The investigation remained ongoing, the house standing silent and dark, harboring secrets yet to be unveiled. The elusive Samuel Whitfield remained a mystery. Some speculated his demise long past, while others believed he had merely moved on, adopting a new guise in a new abode. Behind closed doors, photographs developed, capturing new families, new homes, new watchers in the shadows. Those who sought the truth about the man in the photograph found themselves under the watchful eye of the unknown, a chilling reminder of the darkness that lurked within the house's walls. Story 16, The Enigmatic Calf. The calf, a haven of routine and solitude, had been his sanctuary for as long as anyone could remember. Every day, like clockwork, he would occupy the same table, order the same black coffee, and envelop himself in the same peaceful silence. The barista recognized his face, a familiar presence in the bustling calf, yet his name remained a mystery to all. Then one fateful day he was conspicuously absent. Concerned whispers began to circulate among the regulars. When the authorities were alerted and ventured to his customary seat, they discovered a wallet left behind. Within its confines lay a driver's license bearing a photo, but to their bewilderment there was no name, no address, only a blank void where his identity should have been. Detective Sarah Mercer, a tenacious investigator with an insatiable curiosity, found herself drawn into the enigma surrounding the man now known as John Doe. As she pored over the surveillance footage, a sense of unease settled upon her. The man captured on camera appeared utterly ordinary, unremarkable in stature, clad in a navy coat, a weathered messenger bag slung over his shoulder. His disappearance defied all logic. Pressing her fingertips against the cold metal table, Mercer watched the recording with an intensity bordering on obsession. John, or whoever he was, entered the cafe during the bustling morning rush, placed his usual order, and settled at a secluded table adorned with a lush plant. His actions seemed mundane, sipping coffee, gazing out of the window, jotting down notes in a weathered notebook. But then the inexplicable occurred. Standing up, he left his wallet on the table and strolled towards the restroom corridor, and in that moment he vanished into thin air, never to return. Intrigued and perplexed, Mercer delved deeper into the mystery. The bathroom footage revealed no trace of him, as if he had dissolved into the very fabric of existence. The wallet, meticulously organized with cash and cryptic clues, offered no solace. A lone business card, bearing only a cryptic number, hinted at a deeper enigma shrouding the man's identity. Venturing into the labyrinth of the man's past, Mercer encountered a dead end at every turn. The barista's recollections hinted at a man of few words, always alone, perpetually engrossed in his writings. The notebook, a cryptic collection of codes and sketches, only deepened the enigma. As the investigation unfolded, Mercer stumbled upon a peculiar detail in the footage, a flicker in the timestamp whenever the mysterious man crossed the cafe's threshold. Intrigued by this anomaly, she returned to the cafe, her gaze drawn to an ancient mirror suspended between realms, adorned with symbols reminiscent of the man's notebook. Upon questioning the cafe owner, Mercer uncovered a startling revelation. The mirror held secrets long forgotten, a gateway to realms beyond mortal comprehension. With the mirror's removal, a hidden chamber was unveiled, containing a trove of identical wallets, a journal chronicling decades of inexplicable phenomena, and a chilling message hinting at the closure of a perilous experiment. As Mercer delved deeper, a wave of strange occurrences plagued the cafe, blurring the boundaries between reality and the unknown. Witnesses reported spectral reflections and sightings of the elusive John Doe, casting a veil of uncertainty over the investigation. A breakthrough came in the form of an elderly physicist, Margaret Keller, who shed light on the man's true identity, Daniel Weston, a brilliant mind lost to the annals of time and experimental quantum mirrors. Weston's pursuit of interdimensional travel had led him to the cafe, a nexus of converging realities. In a climactic revelation, Mercer uncovered the chilling truth within the shattered remnants of the mirror, a final message from Weston, a warning not to tread where he had ventured. The case of the man who defied existence remained an enigma, a tale whispered in hushed tones long after the cafe's closure. Mercer, haunted by the specter of the enigmatic man, found solace in her own notebook, mirroring Weston's descent into the unknown. And as the world moved on, a fragment of an antique mirror still hung in the shadows, its surface rippling with the echoes of a reality not meant for mortal eyes. Story 17, the worn envelope aged with yellowed edges, bore a fresh stamp delivered just days ago. With cautious hands, the detective unfolded it, revealing a single sheet of paper. The message, typed in a hurried, uneven font, read, "I am sorry for what I did." A dampness clung to the paper, carrying the faint scent of iron. Only upon closer inspection did they spot a reddish smear along the bottom edge, not ink, but something more ominous. Detective Sarah Morgan secured the letter in an evidence bag, her gloved fingers moving with practiced precision. The forensics team had confirmed her suspicions. The stain was human blood, matching DNA from an unsolved homicide case that had plagued the department for years. The victim, a young journalist named Rebecca Warren, had been found in her apartment, life taken by multiple stab wounds. Her laptop missing, notes scattered hints of a story that might have led to her tragic end. Despite tireless efforts, the case had grown cold until this letter arrived, simply addressed to Homicide Division. Few fingerprints adorned the paper and envelope, only faint smudges hinting at gloved hands. The postmark, a glimmer of hope in a long-forgotten trail. Morgan gathered her team, surrounded by walls adorned with photos, timelines, and profiles that had led nowhere. Pinning the letter's image at the heart of the board, she declared, "This changes everything. Our killer shows remorse." Detective James Chen, Morgan's longtime partner on the case, scrutinized the letter, or pretends to, he suggested. The blood could be a calculated act, a cruel game. The unique typewriter impressions led the forensics team to a model out of production for decades, a rarity, but not impossible to locate. They reached out to antique sellers and collectors, casting a wider net in their pursuit. As the investigation unfolded, they delved into Rebecca's life. Described as relentless by her editor, she delved into exposing corruption. Her latest probe involved a wealthy family entangled in local politics, torn apart by a contentious will and accusations of manipulation. Interviews with Rebecca's boyfriend, Michael Barnes, revealed a shift in his demeanor since the letter's arrival. Nervous, trembling. Rebecca feared she was being followed, he confessed. I brushed it off as paranoia. I should have paid attention. Amidst these leads, a second letter materialized, the same typewriter, the same blood. This time a longer message unveiled secrets. She uncovered too much about the family, the inheritance, the old man's fate. It was never meant to escalate this far. The trail led to the mansion of the deceased patriarch, where the eldest son, Richard, owned an array of antiques, including vintage typewriters. His explanations seemed rehearsed, suspiciously polished. A breakthrough emerged with microscopic fibers on the envelopes matching custom stationery exclusive to the youngest daughter, Eleanor. Questioned, she disclosed Richard's request to borrow her stationery a month prior. A search of Richard's residence exposed a hidden chamber, a trove of evidence linking him to Rebecca's demise. The blood, Rebecca's blood, sealed his fate. Unexpectedly, a connection surfaced between Richard and Michael: financial transactions, payments leading up to Rebecca's murder. Confronted, Michael confessed, revealing a sinister plot to intimidate Rebecca, not to end her life. Eleanor surfaced with a damning recording capturing Richard's callous intent. Arrested in flight, Richard stood trial, denying guilt, shifting blame to Michael. Yet the evidence spoke volumes. The jury's swift verdict sealed Richard's fate. As he faced justice, Detective Morgan approached Rebecca's grieving parents, offering solace in a world forever altered by loss. The blood-stained letters lingered in evidence, a silent testament to the unraveling of carefully laid plans. Rebecca Warren's case became a lesson in investigative lore, teaching that sometimes true breakthroughs arise not from modern marvels, but from the weight of remorse on a killer's soul, etched on an old typewriter, a haunting reminder that justice prevails, even in the darkest of mysteries. Story 18: The Enigmatic House. She crossed the threshold, stirring up dust that danced in the musty air of the abandoned house. Years of neglect had left the walls peeling and the furniture shrouded in ghostly sheets. Every step she took felt like a journey frozen in time, with one peculiar exception: the doors. Each door she opened led her back to the same room, the parlor, no matter how she tried to escape its grasp. The only exit was the way she had come, but when she turned around, the front door had vanished into thin air. The discovery of Morgan Pierce's lifeless body turned the once-forgotten Victorian house into a scene of intrigue and mystery. Detective Sarah Lynn stood at the doorway, observing as forensic experts moved silently through the dimly lit rooms like phantoms. The house had gained a reputation among locals as a place where compasses spun wildly and where a sense of being watched lingered. Now it held secrets darker than any urban legend could conjure. The initial assessment indicates she passed about 3 days ago, the medical examiner murmured, his words barely audible. Cause of death appears to be asphyxiation. Morgan had been found seated in an antique chair in the parlor, facing the entrance as if expecting someone. Her serene expression, hands folded neatly, gave no hint of struggle or resistance. The unsettling stillness of the scene left even seasoned investigators unnerved. Lind inquired who discovered the body. Her partner replied, a real estate agent showing the property to potential buyers. They stumbled upon her sitting there, mistaking her for a trespasser until they drew closer. The house had stood empty since the passing of its previous owner, Eleanor Blackwood, nearly 5 years earlier. Legal disputes had left it abandoned, unsold, and largely forgotten, except by those seeking thrills or mischief. Morgan Pierce, a 26-year-old graduate student delving into architectural anomalies for her thesis, had a fascination with spaces that defied conventional design. Her friends described her as meticulous, driven, and captivated by places that challenged perception. The enigmatic Victorian, known for disorienting visitors, had undoubtedly piqued her curiosity. Her roommate reported her missing 2 days ago, Lind noted. Morgan mentioned visiting the house where people get lost for her research. Investigations unveiled that Morgan had frequented the house in the weeks leading up to her demise. Her journal entries detailed peculiar acoustic phenomena, sudden cold spots, and doors that seemed to shift with each opening. In her final notes, she spoke of bringing specialized equipment to document what she termed spatial inconsistencies, equipment that was nowhere to be found. During the autopsy, an unexpected revelation emerged: traces of a rare alkaloid in Morgan's system, derived from a plant used in shamanic rituals. While the substance could induce disorientation and vivid hallucinations, the levels in her body were not lethal. She wasn't one to dabble in recreational drugs, her boyfriend maintained. Morgan was methodical in her approach to research. She wouldn't have jeopardized her perceptions knowingly. Through digital forensics, deleted messages on Morgan's phone resurfaced, conversations with a kindred spirit who shared her intrigue about the house and its mysteries. The exchanges grew intimate and cryptic, hinting at a sentient presence within the walls. The house retains its memories, read one message. It desires acknowledgement. The trail led to Adam Reeves, an architectural historian who had engaged in discussions with Morgan. His expertise in rare spatial phenomena had captivated her, evolving their professional rapport into a personal connection. Reeves, when questioned, expressed genuine sorrow over Morgan's passing. "The house has a reputation," he disclosed. The original architect wove illusions and distortions into its design, meant to confuse and beguile. Morgan believed there was more to it, beyond mere tricks of construction. However, Reeves had a solid alibi for the time of Morgan's demise, supported by university symposium footage showing him miles away. A breakthrough emerged from an unexpected source: Alina Blackwood's grandson, residing overseas. Contacted by investigators, he disclosed a long-held family secret. "My grandmother wasn't the sole Blackwood to meet their end in that house," he revealed. "Others perished there, always found in the parlor, always in serene repose." The family referred to it as the claiming. He shared journals spanning generations, detailing deaths attributed to natural causes, but bearing a consistent pattern: those who spent time in the house eventually succumbed to what the family cryptically termed the influence. A subsequent search of the property unveiled a concealed compartment behind the parlor fireplace. Within, investigators discovered Morgan's missing equipment alongside a chamber housing artifacts from diverse indigenous cultures, arranged in a precise configuration. At the center lay a weathered figurine embodying a deity linked to liminal spaces, crossroads between realms. Traces of the alkaloid found in Morgan's system lingered on the artifacts, deepening the enigma. The case took a sinister turn when analysis of dust patterns in the house indicated a presence besides Morgan during her final moments. Partial fingerprints, unrelated to Morgan or known visitors, were lifted from doorknobs throughout the residence. 3 weeks into the inquiry, Adam Reeves was found lifeless in his residence, mirroring Morgan's posture, with the same alkaloid in his system. Clutched in his hand was a key that unlocked no door in his home, but fit precisely into the concealed compartment within the Victorian. His parting email, sent as a testament to the unseen forces at play, Reeves wrote, "The house doesn't ensnare you physically, it ensnares your perception." Morgan was correct, the doors lead where they always have, yet an illusion of circular motion clouds the truth. Once awareness dawns, departure is possible, but by then the desire to leave has faded. The case remains unresolved, designated as suspicious deaths under active scrutiny. The Victorian now stands condemned, its access barred by authorities. Yet whispers persist of flickering lights within uncertain evenings and of visitors who vanish without a trace. Some locals believe the house claims those who delve too deeply into its enigmas. Others speculate that Morgan and Reeves unraveled a potent, age-old secret existing in the interstices of conventional reality. The verity remains as elusive as an exit in a house where every door leads back to the beginning. Story 19. The old house had sat silent and empty for years, its history shrouded in whispers of a young woman who vanished without a trace. When new tenants finally crossed the threshold, they were met with a peculiar mystery: the bedroom, a sanctuary of secrets, locked tight from within. With a creak and a sigh, they forced the stubborn door open, revealing a scene frozen in time. The air hung heavy with neglect, dust dancing in the sunlight like forgotten memories. Yet amidst the stillness, something stirred, a presence unseen but deeply felt. The room bore witness to an eerie tableau, the bed neatly made, the mirror polished to perfection. A lone candle stood vigil on the desk, its wax now a hardened pool of lost time, frozen in place. And there on the desk lay a notebook, its pages whispering of a story long untold. Detective Morgan, a seeker of truths, pored over the ink-stained words while forensics danced their delicate dance of discovery around him. The name Elise Winters, etched in ink, beckoned from the pages, her voice echoing through the silence of the room. Elise, a young paralegal with a sharp mind and a keen eye, had vanished into the shadows of the night, leaving behind a trail of cryptic clues. Her meticulous handwriting danced across the pages, each stroke a testament to a mind racing with fear and determination. In the final entry, penned on the eve of her disappearance, she spoke of unseen watchers and whispered threats, a chilling premonition of the darkness closing in. As the detective delved deeper into Elise's world, a web of deceit and betrayal unfurled before him. Her colleagues spoke of a woman haunted by the truth, digging into the dark heart of corporate malfeasance. The missing pieces of the puzzle began to fall into place, revealing a sinister tapestry of greed and deception. The room, a silent witness to Elise's final hours, held its secrets close. No bloodstains marred the floor, no signs of struggle marred the pristine facade. Only the lingering scent of dust and a faint hint of something darker, something hidden beneath the surface. In a hidden compartment beneath the floorboards, a trove of damning evidence lay waiting a key, a flash drive, a trail of breadcrumbs leading to the heart of the mystery. The truth, it seemed, had been waiting patiently to be discovered, locked away in shadows and whispers. As the investigation unfolded, a chilling truth emerged, a web of corruption and deceit that reached far beyond the confines of the old house. Elise's voice, captured in hidden recordings, spoke of a deadly secret buried deep within the heart of a pharmaceutical empire. Her quest for justice, though cut short, echoed through the halls of power, shaking the foundations of the guilty. In a twist of fate, the shadows of the past reached out to claim their own. Vincent Harriman, a man of power and influence, stood accused of a heinous crime, his carefully constructed facade crumbling in the face of overwhelming evidence. The walls of his deception, once impenetrable, now lay shattered at his feet. Through the lens of justice, Elise's legacy shone bright, a beacon of truth in a world cloaked in shadows. Her room, a silent witness to her courage and determination, stood as a testament to the power of one woman's unwavering pursuit of justice. As the final chapter closed on the tale of Elise Winters, the old house stood silent once more, its secrets laid bare but not forgotten. In the darkness of the night, a faint light shimmered in the upstairs window, a ghostly echo of a life lost but never truly extinguished. And so, the house stood as a silent sentinel, guarding the memory of a woman who dared to challenge the darkness and in doing so, found her own redemption. Story 20. In a world where mysteries lurk in the shadows, a peculiar tale unfolded, a tale that began with a mere pocket dial, a jumble of static and faint echoes that might have easily slipped away into oblivion. But fate had other plans, for within that crackling void a voice emerged, trembling and urgent, a woman's voice, whispering words that pierced the veil of silence. He's here, and then an abrupt hush, as if the very air held its breath in anticipation. The call originated from a desolate house, forgotten by time, its walls echoing with whispers of the past. An eerie stillness enveloped the abandoned dwelling, where no footprints marred the dust-laden floors, no signs of intrusion tainted the solitude. And yet in the dim light of the kitchen, an enigmatic glow emanated from a solitary phone perched on the counter, as if beckoning the living into the realm of the unknown. Detective Morgan Reed found herself ensnared in the mystery, her mind consumed by the haunting whisper that lingered in the air, desperation and fear woven into its spectral cadence. The house, once a sanctuary for the Sullivan family, now stood as a silent witness to untold secrets, its past shrouded in tragedy. The daughter, Catherine Sullivan, her name a spectral whisper on the lips of the living, her existence a mere echo of bygone days. A background check unveiled the chilling truth. Catherine, the former owner of the phone, had perished in a tragic accident, her voice now a ghostly presence reaching out from beyond the veil. As Morgan delved deeper into the enigma, she uncovered a web of deceit and treachery that defied all logic. The phone, a relic of the deceased, bore witness to a spectral call made at the precise moment of Catherine's demise, a chilling echo of a life cut short. The forensic team, baffled by the inexplicable circumstances, could offer no solace, no answers to the riddle that gripped their reality in icy tendrils. The heart of the investigation lay in those fleeting seconds of the call, a tapestry of static, a breath caught in time, and 5 haunting words that reverberated through the void. Voice analysis, a testament to the uncanny, confirmed the impossible. Catherine's voice, resurrected from the past, speaking truths that defied reason. The spectral call, a beacon of the supernatural, drew Morgan and her partner, Detective Walsh, into a realm where reality frayed at the edges, where the line between the living and the dead blurred into obscurity. Interviews with those who had known Catherine unveiled a tapestry of sorrow and suspicion. Her father, a specter of grief cloaked in confusion, her mother, a solitary figure haunted by memories long buried, and Mark Jennings, the shadow of a man, his alibi a fragile shield against the encroaching darkness. Yet the whispers of the past refused to be silenced, their echoes reverberating through the hollow chambers of the abandoned house. A revelation born of a mother's trembling hand shattered the fragile facade of ignorance. A journal, a chronicle of love turned to ashes, of fear and desperation etched in ink. Mark, the specter of Catherine's past, now stood at the precipice of justice, his carefully constructed facade crumbling under the weight of truth. The buried phone, a silent witness to unspeakable horrors, revealed a tale of betrayal and malice, a narrative woven in blood and deceit. As the tendrils of fate tightened around Mark, the truth unfurled like a dark flower in bloom, a tale of manipulation and cruelty, of lives extinguished in the name of obsession. The echoes of Catherine's voice, no longer a spectral whisper, but a clarion call for justice, resounded through the halls of the abandoned house, a testament to the resilience of the forgotten. And so, as Mark faced the judgment of his peers, as the gavel fell and justice prevailed, Catherine's mother clutched the journal to her chest, a silent witness to the triumph of the truth. The phone, now a relic of the past, lay dormant in the evidence locker, its silent vigil a reminder of the voices that refuse to be silenced. For in the tapestry of the unknown, in the shadows where mysteries dwell, the echoes of the past linger on, a testament to the enduring power of the human spirit. Story 21. The aged apartment exuded its peculiarities, pipes that groaned, floorboards that creaked in harmony with the building's settling whispers. Yet the new occupant discerned a different cadence amidst the nocturnal symphony. The footsteps above were too precise, too deliberate for ordinary nocturnal wanderings. Strangely, they echoed from the levels supposedly beyond her own, slow and measured, as if tracing invisible paths in the darkness. One fateful night, a surge of courage propelled her to tap the ceiling with a broomstick, breaking the rhythmic pattern of the unseen footsteps. Abruptly, the sound ceased, swallowed by a thickening silence. Then, a single knock reverberated from within the confines of the ceiling, sending shivers down her spine. Sarah Coleman, the tenant, chose to bury the unsettling encounter deep within herself, attributing the phenomenon to the whims of an old building, or perhaps a curious critter that had ventured into the attic space. Night after night, the methodical footfalls persisted, a haunting reminder of an unseen presence navigating the shadows above her. In an attempt to shield herself from the enigmatic echoes, she resorted to cranking up the volume of her television, donning headphones to bed, anything to cloak the eerie footfalls that traced their patterns across her ceiling in the veil of night. Detective Morris stumbled upon the apartment's unsettling tale when a maintenance worker unearthed a clandestine crawlspace during routine repairs. A section of drywall outside Sarah's dwelling had been excised to address a water leak, unveiling a narrow passage that defied the building's blueprints. Illuminated by a flashlight, the passage revealed a crude living quarter, scattered food wrappers, discarded water bottles, a soiled blanket, and a weathered notebook. Summoned by the building's superintendent, Detective Morris and his partner Detective Rivera arrived to a trembling maintenance worker, his pallid complexion betraying the horrors he had unearthed. "Someone's been dwelling within the walls," he stammered, his voice trembling with dread. "Someone has been watching." The discovered notebook chronicled meticulous observations of Sarah Coleman, her routines, her visitors, her culinary preferences, her viewing habits, even the timings of her slumber. Initially penned with precision, the handwriting morphed into erratic scrawls in its final entries, interspersed with cryptic symbols etched along its margins. "The subject no longer acknowledges my signals," the last entry lamented. "She has chosen to ignore me. None dares to ignore me." Forensic teams delved into the crawlspace, unearthing fingerprints that eluded identification in any database. A labyrinth of passages intricately woven into the building's walls and ceilings unfurled before them, some dating back decades, their enigmatic paths converging upon a singular apartment, Sarah Coleman's. Interviews with current residents yielded no abnormal occurrences, veiling the hidden terrors lurking within the building's structural embrace. Former inhabitants, however, unraveled a different narrative. Three predecessors of Sarah's recounted sensations of being watched, of unexplained movements haunting their existence within those walls. One tenant had hastily departed after a mere fortnight, their experiences concealed by a veil of apprehension, fearing their accounts would be dismissed as paranoia. A breakthrough materialized when forensic scrutiny unearthed minute blood traces within one of the crawl spaces, linking them to Martin Weaver, a past resident who had vanished inexplicably 4 years prior. A missing persons report loomed over his disappearance, its trail gone cold in the passage of time. Martin had occupied the apartment directly beneath Sarah's. Revisiting Martin's enigmatic vanishing, Detective Morris unveiled a trail of complaints regarding noises resonating from above his abode. Confrontations with the tenant occupying the upper floor, a reclusive figure named Edward, had preceded Martin's mysterious disappearance. Edward had absconded the following month, leaving no trace of his whereabouts. A meticulous scrutiny of Edward's transient residency history unveiled a pattern, a nomadic existence spanning 2 decades, characterized by a penchant for top-floor abodes, minimal social interactions, and sudden departures devoid of explanations. A neighbor from Edward's former residence recalled his brooding demeanor, punctuated by incessant demands for silence that bordered on obsession. Tracing Edward's footsteps led investigators to a remote cabin, its walls adorned with a chilling tapestry of photographs and notes. Portraits of residents from various apartment edifices, including Sarah Coleman and Martin Weaver, adorned the walls alongside intricate maps detailing ventilation systems and structural vulnerabilities. Elaborate journals chronicled observations of the specimens and maintenance of the habitat, casting a sinister light upon Edward's clandestine endeavors. A corkboard at the cabin's heart bore a collection of newspaper clippings, missing persons reports, 6 in total, mirroring former residents from Edward's past dwellings. Beneath the board, deep grooves marred the wooden floor, silent testaments to a sinister ritual enacted within those walls. The cabin's grim exterior yielded to a macabre discovery as cadaver dogs led investigators to freshly disturbed earth, unveiling a series of clandestine graves shrouded in darkness. As forensic experts endeavored to unveil the identities of the fallen, Detective Morris retraced his steps to Sarah's abode. The crawl spaces had been sealed, yet whispers of spectral echoes persisted among the residents. Installing state-of-the-art security systems unraveled a chilling secret tucked within the crevice where the ceiling met the wall, a fresh notebook, its pages pulsing with the same eerie familiarity. The initial entry bore a cryptic message: "They found my old nest, but not my new one." The writings echoed the harrowing verses of its predecessor, culminating in a crude sketch of Sarah's apartment layout, a crimson trail marking a new passage etched into the blueprint, and a date ominous in its foreboding. Responding swiftly, officers descended upon Sarah's dwelling only to find it deserted. Her phone lay abandoned on the kitchen counter, the television casting flickering shadows across the room. The bathroom mirrored, fogged with steam, unveiling a haunting message etched upon the glass: "Look up." The ceiling panel above the shower had been displaced, a silent invitation to the unknown that lingered beyond. The manhunt for Edward, now unveiled as Edward Mercer, a former construction savant specializing in renovations, presses on, his shadow stretching across state lines. Thermal scans of Sarah's residence unveiled no lingering presence within the walls, leaving behind a void that echoed with the whispers of the departed. Sarah Coleman, a spectral enigma, remains lost to the abyss, her fate intertwined with a tapestry of vanishing souls that transcends time and space. Detective Morris, haunted by the phantom footsteps and the unseen gazes that linger in the shadows, finds himself ensnared in a labyrinth of unanswered questions. Nights find him gazing upward, attuned to the silence that envelops him, pondering the unseen listeners that dwell within the walls of his own domicile. And as the darkness encroaches, he wonders who else may be listening in the stillness of the night, their presence concealed within the walls that harbor silent whispers of the forgotten. Story 22, the town held its secrets close, whispering tales of the house concealed at the edge of the woods. A solitary figure, shrouded in mystery, its presence unacknowledged by the townsfolk. Its windows, like darkened eyes, gazed out into the unknown, while the sagging porch bore the weight of forgotten years. No one laid claim to its ownership, no memory lingered of its origins. Yet when a group of hikers strayed too near, their eyes beheld a peculiar sight, names etched into the wooden walls, carved deep as if to warn intruders away. At the very bottom of the list, fresh and untarnished, one name stood out, unfamiliar to all. A name that sent shivers through the group as one of them faltered, whispering in a trembling voice, "That's mine." Under the cloak of night, a call pierced the silence, recorded by dispatch as a routine trespassing incident. Mason Wright, the lead hiker who discovered his own name marked upon the desolate house, spoke with a quiver in his voice. Responding officers anticipated a mere act of youthful mischief, a prank among friends, but what awaited them defied all rational explanation. Detective Sarah Keller arrived as darkness draped the forest in its inky embrace. Her flashlight pierced the shadows, casting an eerie glow upon the weathered facade of the structure. The names of 27 souls adorned the eastern wall, some fading with time, others sharp as if freshly carved, and at the base, Mason Wright, the inscription still redolent of sawdust. "I've never set foot here before," Mason professed, his breath swirling in the frigid air. "How could anyone know my name?" The investigation unfurled with scrutiny into the backgrounds of each name listed. The findings sent a chill down the spines of the detective team. Every name corresponded to a person reported missing over the span of 4 decades. Some cases had gone cold, while others remained open, all united by a harrowing detail: the individuals had vanished while traversing the woods alone. Forensic analysts meticulously documented each carving, noting the depths, techniques, and weathering patterns. The oldest name, Rebecca Hansen, harkened back to a disappearance 37 years prior, a young woman who ventured into the woods and never emerged. Search efforts yielded naught but a lone hiking boot beside a murmuring stream. Interrogations of Mason yielded a consistent narrative. He professed no ties to the area beyond this particular trek with his college comrades. Randomly chosen based on an online suggestion, the trail held no significance to him beyond its natural allure. His background divulged no connections to the other names adorning the enigmatic walls. Attention turned towards Mason's companions. Emily Chen, the group's photographer, presented snapshots captured during their journey. Upon inspection, analysts noticed a disquieting presence, a blurred figure looming in the background of 3 distinct photographs. A tall, slender form, forever obscured by the veil of trees. "We encountered no one else along the trail," Emily maintained. "We would have remembered." Detective Keller commanded a search of the house's interior. Neglected and forlorn, dust cloaked every surface, furniture lay in disarray. Yet in the basement, a macabre tableau awaited discovery. Personal effects of the missing hikers sat arranged meticulously on wooden shelves: watches, backpacks, cameras, wallets, all labeled with names corresponding to those outside. Under the keen eye of evidence technicians, bloodstains emerged upon the concrete floor under ultraviolet scrutiny, remnants of a futile attempt to erase the past. Despite the absence of bodies beneath the dwelling, cadaver dogs signaled at the rear of the property where the forest loomed thick and impenetrable. As the investigation deepened, peculiar behaviors manifested in Mason Wright. Reports of whispers at his doorstep, enigmatic footprints leading to his threshold but not away, shadowy figures observing from the periphery. Assigned protection by the department, Mason's paranoia burgeoned. A breakthrough came with the unearthing of land records from county archives. The abode belonged to a recluse, Victor Blackwood, a hunter who vanished without a trace 15 years prior, his disappearance overlooked by official scrutiny. Armed with a warrant, Detective Keller delved further into the encompassing woods. Among the foliage, a network of primitive hunting blinds emerged, strategically situated along frequented paths. Within one blind, a journal lay bearing meticulous observations of hikers' routes, equipment, patterns. The script mirrored that of Victor Blackwood, detailing a chilling evolution from hunting game to hunting humans, each entry a haunting account of his victims, their selection, and the pursuit thereof. The manhunt for Blackwood spanned jurisdictions, deploying helicopters equipped with thermal imaging and tactical teams scouring every crevice. Yet the elusive figure eluded capture. Mason Wright fell off the grid, his apartment vacant, his presence a mere echo. On his chamber wall, a recent carving sent a shiver down the spines of all who beheld it. The hunter becomes the hunted. Weeks passed without a trace of Mason, until a grim revelation unfolded during a subsequent sweep of Blackwood's residence. Concealed behind a false panel in the basement, a workshop emerged, replete with woodworking tools, preservatives, and a freshly carved wooden piece bearing a new name not yet affixed to the exterior wall. The name struck a chord with Detective Keller. It belonged to the chief forensic technician who had processed the house earlier. Inexplicably absent that day, the technician remained unreachable by phone. A vigilant perimeter enveloped the house, cameras capturing every movement, motion sensors poised for any breach. The stage was set. 3 nights hence, an alert sounded, sensors agitated by an interloper. Surveillance footage depicted a figure emerging from the woods, towering and lithe, moving with an eerie grace. As tactical teams descended, the cameras faltered briefly, and upon restoration, the figure had vanished into the obsidian night. To this day, the house remains under constant vigil, a sentinel of the unknown. Mason Wright and the forensic technician eluded discovery, their fates entwined with the enigma of the woods. The investigation persists, drawing upon fresh resources as echoes of similar disappearances resonate in distant wooded realms. The names etched upon the walls have woven a tapestry of dread among law enforcers, some choosing silence, others steering clear of the haunting enigma altogether. Local hikers skirt the house, fearful that mere mention may consign their names to that infamous roll, the names unspoken. Story 23. The tale begins in a fading costume shop, its shelves bare, its essence dissipating like smoke in the wind. Amidst the remnants of forgotten disguises, a woman's hand reached out and plucked a mask from a forgotten corner, a mask with features so delicately crafted, yet unsettlingly lifelike. As she placed it on the worn counter, the cashier hesitated, a shadow of unease crossing his face. "That's not ours," he muttered, a tremor in his voice. Perplexed, the woman checked for a tag, only to find none. With a casual shrug, she decided to bring the mysterious mask home with her. That night, as the world slumbered in peaceful ignorance, she awoke to a soft sound, a whisper of fabric shifting in the darkness. Her heart quickened as her gaze fell upon the nightstand, where the mask now sat, its gaze fixed upon her in an eerie stillness. The woman known as Catherine Reed would later be discovered by a concerned neighbor, the morning light spilling into her home through the slightly ajar door. Detective Morgan arrived at the scene, where the air hung heavy with the weight of the unknown. The shutter's rhythmic clicks provided a haunting backdrop to the hushed voices of the investigators. No signs of forced entry, just a peaceful home disturbed by tragedy. Catherine lay motionless, her features frozen in a silent scream of terror, the mask nowhere to be found. The medical examiner's examination yielded no clear cause of death, no wounds, no signs of struggle. Only the expression of terror etched into Catherine's features, a silent testament to the horror she had endured in her final moments. The detective, with a keen eye for detail, noted the seemingly ordinary surroundings, each item holding a clue to the enigma that shrouded Catherine's demise. As the investigation unfolded, a chilling pattern emerged. Security footage from the costume shop revealed the cashier's confusion, the owner's denial, and the mask's mysterious origins. The shop's history intertwined with tales of a collector's untimely demise, whispering of dark forces at play beyond human comprehension. Forensic analysis unveiled microscopic fibers on Catherine's fingertips, a cryptic clue leading the investigators down a path fraught with ancient mysteries. Each victim, each mask, each expression of terror, pieces of a puzzle spanning decades, waiting to be solved. A retired detective shared a forbidden truth, a truth written in ancient symbols hidden within the masks, a truth of ritualistic soul transference and malevolent entities seeking vessels for their dark purpose. Catherine's own journal revealed her descent into fear and paranoia, her realization of the mask's sinister nature, and her ultimate fate at the hands of an otherworldly force. The investigation took a harrowing turn as surveillance footage captured a figure wearing the mask, moving with Catherine's likeness yet devoid of humanity, a puppet dancing to a macabre tune played by unseen hands. The mask vanished, only to resurface months later in a distant vintage shop, its hunger for souls undiminished. The detective, haunted by the unsolved mystery, keeps Catherine's journal close, a reminder of the darkness that lurks beyond the veil of reality. As night falls, she feels the weight of unseen eyes upon her, a chilling reminder that the mask still waits, hungry and patient, for its next victim. And so the cycle continues, the mask's legacy stretching back through time, seeking new hosts to fill with terror and despair. It waits in the shadows, biding its time until it finds another unsuspecting soul, ready to succumb to the darkness that dwells within its empty gaze. Story 24, The Whispering House. She longed to give the nursery a fresh coat of paint before the baby's arrival. The faded blue walls held a silent history, stories of the past whispered within the layers of paint. As she applied the first strokes of white, a hidden secret emerged beneath the surface, a message, faint at first, then growing clearer. Don't let it hear you. Her breath caught in her throat as she took a step back, noticing tiny handprints in the fresh paint, too high for any child to have left them. The discovery in the nursery of the old Morgan residence marked the beginning of what would become known as the Whispering House case. The young couple had bought the Victorian home at a surprisingly low price, unaware of its dark past. Detective Sarah Klein arrived at the door, her notebook ready. The pregnant woman who answered wore paint-splattered overalls, her tired eyes betraying her lack of sleep. She recounted finding the message and handprints, her hands trembling with fear. The previous owners had vanished in the dead of night, leaving behind only rumors and a sense of dread among the neighbors. Detective Klein explored the historic home, her footsteps echoing on the creaky floorboards. In the nursery, the abandoned message and handprints still lingered, a chilling reminder of the past. Back at the precinct, the detective delved into the property's records. The house had changed hands numerous times, each family staying for a short period. Child welfare reports hinted at a dark presence within the walls, with children claiming to hear whispers and feel unseen eyes watching them. Further investigation revealed the house's connection to Eleanor Blackwood, a widow who once ran an orphanage on the property. 5 children had disappeared under her care, their fate a mystery. The detective interviewed former residents, uncovering a pattern of eerie occurrences that had plagued each family. Forensic analysis linked the mysterious messages to Eleanor's handwriting, while the handprints remained a haunting enigma, unchanged over the years despite different children living in the house. The detective's persistence led to a chilling discovery in the basement, confirming the tragic fate of the missing children. As the truth unraveled, the nursery walls glowed with hidden handprints under the luminol spray, a silent testament to the children's desperate attempts to be found. Eleanor's journals exposed her twisted beliefs, leading to the closure of the case and the proper burial of the victims. The house stood silent and empty, its dark secrets buried but not forgotten. Detective Klein's final report detailed the grim truth, capturing the eerie essence of the whispering house. The nursery walls were demolished, yet whispers of children's voices lingered in the air, a ghostly echo of the past. The condemned house became a cold case, a physical reminder of unsolved mysteries and unanswered questions that echoed through the corridors of time. The detective kept a haunting photograph of glowing handprints, a chilling reminder that some secrets are etched into the very soul of a place, beyond the reach of mortal hands. Story 25. The real estate listing made no mention of a basement. The blueprints held no clue to its existence. Yet beneath the old carpet, a hidden door lurked, its rusted handle weighing heavy in the family's hands. With a collective effort, they pried it open, unleashing a gust of stale air thick with the scent of damp earth. Descending the steps into darkness, they braced for storage space. What greeted them instead was a solitary chair beneath a swaying light bulb, casting eerie shadows on a wall adorned with a series of photographs all depicting them. The Mercer family had settled into the suburban abode during a wintry dusk, the skeletal trees outside standing stark against the cold sky. The house, with its weathered façade and creaking floors, exuded a charm they had found appealing, a charm interwoven with a history they had yet to fathom. Detective Sarah Connors, accompanied by her partner, arrived at the scene as the crime unit secured the area with fluttering yellow tape. Mrs. Mercer's quivering voice had relayed the chilling discovery beneath their very living room floor. "We must document everything before further exploration," Connors directed, gloving her hands methodically. Camera flashes punctuated the stairwell as the forensic team documented the basement. The cramped space, akin to a standard bedroom, boasted concrete walls painted a somber gray. In the center, a solitary chair remained anchored to the floor, while above it, the bare bulb cast eerie shadows that danced with an unseen breeze. However, it was the chronological array of photographs that seized their attention, each image meticulously dated and arranged. "These images span back nearly 4 weeks," Connor's partner remarked, scrutinizing the timestamps inscribed on the photo backs. "Here's Mrs. Mercer dozing on the couch, Mr. Mercer at the kitchen table, the children in their rooms." Despite a thorough investigation, no signs of forced entry or theft surfaced. The security system had failed to trigger, leaving only a breach of privacy and a shroud of unease hanging over the family. Tracing the property's history through previous owners, the case grew increasingly unsettling. Discrepancies in records hinted at a clandestine past, with blueprints altered, permits withdrawn, and inspection reports heavily redacted. The pivotal lead emerged during an interview with the contractor who had renovated the house years prior. His denial of the existence of the basement room sent a chill down their spines, his hands trembling with dread. Extracting data from a hidden memory card, digital forensics unveiled a trove of additional images depicting not only the Mercers, but families preceding them in the house. Intimate moments, mundane routines, captured surreptitiously by an elusive presence. The discovery of audio recordings concealed within the basement further deepened the mystery, hinting at a sophisticated surveillance network entrenched within the very walls. "We must scour every inch, every crevice," Connors urged, her tone taut with urgency. The subsequent revelation of a hidden monitoring station behind the photographs exposed a journal brimming with detailed observations of each household that had dwelled within the house. The journal's authorship traced back to Edward Kelvin, the property's enigmatic builder who had seemingly vanished during construction. As the investigation unfolded, Kelvin's delusional fixation on the families as mere subjects in his grand design came to light. Secluded within the confines of the house, he had meticulously watched, recorded, and documented their lives, convinced of his guardianship over the property. The manhunt culminated in Kelvin's discovery within a hidden crawlspace, his emaciated form a testament to years spent concealed within the house's framework. During interrogation, Kelvin's detached account painted the families as unwitting actors in his private drama. His conviction of ownership, rooted in his distorted reality, cast a chilling pall over the case. Following a psychological evaluation, Kelvin was deemed unfit, his detached demeanor a facade shielding a fractured psyche fixated on his self-appointed role as custodian of the house. The Mercer family, like those before them, chose to sever ties with the property, leaving behind possessions in their hasty departure. The subsequent trial unveiled the extent of Kelvin's surveillance infrastructure, revealing a house designed not just for habitation, but for relentless observation. As the jury deliberated, Kelvin remained aloof, his mind already lost within the labyrinth of his creation, where he could still roam the spectral halls he had crafted. The property met its end in demolition, its secrets buried beneath the raised earth. Yet, for the families haunted by the specter of unseen eyes and unheard whispers, the violation lingered. The lingering unease, the doubt of solitude in the sanctity of their homes, persisted a legacy of a guardian unseen and a watcher unheard, forever etched within the walls that had once sheltered them. Story 26. Once upon a time there was a flicker, a mere blip in the baby monitor's transmission. At first the mother brushed it off as mere interference, a glitch in the system. But then the crackling of audio followed, and a voice, soft and eerie, whispered, "SHHH, go back to sleep." A chill ran down her spine, freezing her blood in its tracks. Panic seized her heart as she dashed to her son's room, each step echoing like thunder in her ears. But when she threw open the door, her worst fear became reality. The crib stood empty, devoid of the precious bundle that should have been nestled inside. The window remained shut, the door securely locked. The only anomaly in the room was a limp stuffed rabbit lying on the floor, its unblinking black eyes fixed on her with an unsettling gaze. Rebecca's screams pierced the night, raw and primal, echoing through the silent house until her voice grew hoarse. The neighbors, stirred from their slumber by her anguished cries, dialed emergency services. And when the authorities arrived, they found her huddled on the nursery floor, clutching the stuffed rabbit to her chest, her world shattered by the inexplicable disappearance of her 4-month-old son, Samuel. The investigation that followed was shrouded in mystery. No signs of forced entry marred the household, the security system standing vigilant throughout the night. The baby monitor footage, the only clue to the enigma, revealed nothing out of the ordinary before the unsettling voice disrupted the tranquility of the night. How could someone infiltrate a locked home, snatch a child, and vanish without a trace, leaving behind nothing but a haunting whisper and a displaced toy? As suspicion cast its shadow over Rebecca, her husband Daniel returned from his business trip, his presence stirring a new wave of questions. Tensions lingered in their strained marriage, exacerbated by Rebecca's struggles with postpartum depression. The detective's gaze lingered on her composed facade during questioning, a facade that seemed unnervingly calm for a mother whose world had been torn asunder. But then a glimmer of hope emerged from the shadows of uncertainty. Microscopic fibers foreign to the household were discovered on the nursery windowsill, a telltale sign of a stealthy intruder with climbing expertise. The investigation pivoted, uncovering security footage of a shadowy figure lurking in the night, a footprint in the garden soil hinting at a skilled trespasser. Daniel, once in the periphery of suspicion, found himself under the magnifying glass. Unusual calluses on his hands, a newfound passion for rock climbing, and a web of financial secrets painted a damning portrait. A second family hidden in the shadows, a web of deceit woven with malicious intent. And then a breakthrough. The baby monitor, the silent witness to the night's horrors, unveiled its secrets through digital forensics. Hacked and manipulated, it had betrayed its purpose, broadcasting a malevolent voice that led investigators to a basement where a startling revelation awaited. Samuel, alive and unharmed, was in the care of a woman named Elaine, a ghost from Daniel's past. As the tangled web of deception unraveled, Elaine's connection to Daniel surfaced through a tragic history of loss and obsession. The courtroom held its breath as the truth unfurled, revealing a sinister plot fueled by greed and heartache. Daniel's denials crumbled under the weight of digital evidence, his involvement etched in the fibers of climbing ropes and the echoes of whispered plans. In the quiet of the courtroom, the enhanced audio from the baby monitor echoed, a haunting reminder of the night that shattered a family. Daniel's cough, a damning echo of his presence at the scene he claimed to be ignorant of, sealed his fate. The jury's swift decision rendered justice, condemning him and Elaine to the consequences of their heinous crimes. Rebecca and Samuel, scarred but resilient, embarked on a journey to rebuild their lives, leaving behind the shadows of betrayal and loss. The baby monitor, a silent sentinel of truth, remained a symbol of the darkness that once gripped their home. And as Samuel grew, oblivious to the past that haunted his infancy, Rebecca kept the stuffed rabbit locked away, a silent witness to the chilling secrets it had borne witness to. The monitor never lied. It whispered the truth in the dead of night, a truth that reverberated through the darkness, forever altering the lives it touched. Story 27. The river flowed lazily that peaceful morning, its surface smooth as glass, reflecting the soft light of dawn. The fisherman, lost in his own thoughts, almost missed the sight of a solitary suitcase bobbing near the shore. Initially dismissing it as mere garbage, a closer inspection revealed a disturbing truth. The pungent odor that wafted from the case was overpowering, unmistakable. It was wrapped in chains, its metal edges tinged with rust from exposure to the elements. When the authorities pried it open, it was not clothes they found inside, but something far more chilling, a tangle of hair, fingers frozen in a haunting grip. And at the bottom, a note that sent shivers down their spines. This isn't the first. Detective Sarah Mercer arrived at the scene, a serene mask of professionalism concealing the unease stirring within her. The victim, a woman in her mid-30s with dark locks and now pallid skin marked by the water's touch, lay before her. The medical examiner meticulously catalogued every detail, a solemn dance of respect before the body was finally taken away. What struck Mercer was not the gruesome manner of disposal, but the eerie care with which the victim had been arranged: manicured nails, freshly styled hair, clad in expensive attire. She wasn't discarded here, Mercer observed quietly, her gaze fixed on the gentle ripples caressing the muddy banks. She was readied, presented. The victim was soon identified as Catherine Walsh, a successful real estate agent known for her knack in selling luxurious properties. Divorced, childless, she led a solitary life in an affluent neighborhood, Colleagues spoke of her as driven, meticulous, and fiercely private. Her sudden disappearance, reported by her assistant after she missed a crucial showing, raised eyebrows. She wouldn't have missed that appointment, the assistant insisted adamantly during questioning. That sale meant everything to her. As investigators delved into Walsh's meticulously kept modern home, a peculiar sense of order permeated every inch. Designer furniture impeccably arranged, surfaces immaculate. The fridge housed neatly labeled meals, the closet boasted color-coordinated attire, shoes neatly encased. But a single drawer ajar in her home office revealed a leather journal. The final entry sent chills down their spines. He's watching again. Same car, different plates. Diving into Walsh's digital footprint unveiled a pattern, numerous messages from unknown senders, all bearing the ominous phrase, "I see your perfection." Each message, sent at the exact same time on different days, sent a shiver down Mercer's spine. Her online searches for security systems and self-defense tools painted a picture of growing unease. Mercer pieced together the puzzle, the meticulous care taken with the victim, the cryptic messages, the unsettling journal entry. "Our perpetrator is methodical," she murmured to her partner. This was no crime of passion. It was a carefully orchestrated ritual. A breakthrough came unexpectedly when a local pawnshop owner recognized Walsh's distinctive emerald necklace, absent from her belongings. The culprit was identified as Michael Linden, an unassuming maintenance worker with a penchant for the unnoticed. Surveillance footage painted a damning picture of Linden's repeated visits to Walsh's building, often when she was away showcasing properties. A search of Linden's humble abode unraveled the full extent of his dark obsession. Photos adorned his walls, capturing women akin to Walsh, their unaware faces haunting. Amidst his possessions lay a shrine to his victims, each item meticulously arranged: a lock of hair, a stained tissue, keys, receipts, a chilling insight into a disturbed mind. In the interrogation room, Linden remained eerily composed, his demeanor betraying no hint of remorse. "They were flawed," he finally confessed, his voice devoid of emotion. "They projected perfection, but I saw through their facades." Catherine left her desk in disarray, missed a spot with her lipstick. Her perfection was a lie. The search for Linden's first two victims led investigators to remote locations where two more suitcases were unearthed, each harboring women resembling Walsh. Real estate agents like her, promoting an image of perfectionist precision. Throughout the trial, Linden remained an enigma, his impassive facade unwavering as his chilling methods were laid bare. As the judge handed down a life sentence with no chance of parole, the families of the victims sat in silent grief. For Detective Mercer, the case was closed, yet shadows of unanswered questions lingered. What drove Linden's fixation on these particular women? What inner imperfection tormented him, seeking resolution in his twisted acts? The river flowed on, its waters carrying away all traces of the grim tale. But on Mercer's desk in the precinct lay copies of those haunting notebooks, a stark reminder that within the veneer of normalcy, darkness could lurk. The most perilous predators, she realized, were often those camouflaged in plain sight, patiently observing, waiting for the mask of perfection to slip.